infantry massed up at the Asylum Down headquarters of the governing party. Streets leading to the party's offices were festooned with the red, blue and white colors of the Elephant Party. If Allen showed pump, this, according to supporters, was the pinnacle of state power vehemently behind a man believed by many top echelons of the party as the only one who makes breaking the eight a reality. That show of support left the entire process stagnant when Dr. Bawumia attempted entering. Flanked by MPs and leading members of the party, Dr. Bawumia said he is the man to lead the NPP break the eight.
Together with you, I want to see a Ghana where we leverage technology, data and systems for inclusive economic growth. I want to make Ghana the digital hub of Africa. I want us to bridge the digital divide and apply digital technology and artificial intelligence for the transformation of healthcare, education, and public service delivery, amongst others. And that is why I am offering myself in all humility to contest in the primaries of this phenomenal party, the great new patriotic party, to become our flag bearer and presidential candidate for 2024. And inshallah, the President of the Republic of Ghana.
Many are those, however, who have questioned the long service of the Vice President. But for DMB, he has worked his way up to his current position through service.
Over the last 22 years, I have worked hard for the new patriotic party and for Ghana. From during the President Kufuor era as Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, through our years in opposition and now in government. During this period, I have sacrificed for the party. I have defended the party in good times and in challenging times. I have never wavered or slacked, never. And I have built a solid track record of achievement and performance as Vice President of the Republic of Ghana.
For the team and supporters, Dr. Bawumia remains the best choice.
In global world, we are moving to digital world. So with the mind and the idea of this man, I think we'll move towards to where we want to be.
Digitalization of the health facility has made it so easy. First, you come to the hospital, we are not going to look for a folder. Wherever your folder is hidden, we are going to look for it. But today, because of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's intervention, we can simply, just by using a card, go through OPD, consultation, lab, pharmacy with ease.
If we want Ghana to be like the UK, we should support Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia to bring digitization to Ghana and open it for everyone.
Oh, well, that's Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia there. He is the second person to this week have submitted the nomination forms after picking them up about 2 weeks ago. Well, he says that he is going to take Ghana to the next level, whatever that means. We are not going to attempt to try and interpret his own words. His people, his assigns, his aides, and the members of his campaign team have been tasked with that responsibility of explaining to the Ghanaian people exactly what he means by that. So they're going to be joining us in the studio to help us all understand what this next level really means. Also, alleged corruption and corruption-related activities in the mining sector. This week, we saw the court injunction of the special prosecutor for the arrest of Charles Bissiou also as a topical key issue that many of you talked about. Charles Bissiou was eventually declared wanted by the Office of Special Prosecutor. He came out and says, I am not hiding, I'm in the Western region. I'm ready to turn myself in. Only for 24 hours later, another development of a 10-day interlocutory injunction on his arrest. The special prosecutor says, regardless of this arrest, of this interlocutory injunction, I can arrest Charles Bissiou if I want to. What is preventing the Office of Special Prosecutor from doing so? If he can still arrest without a warrant. Stay with me. We will tell you what the position of the law is. I'll be joined by two prominent lawyers in this country who have a conversation. Also, we have an exclusive interview with lawyer Chachuti Carter, former Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, GNPC. And that particular institution has been one of the key issues that many of you have been talking about, especially with that attempted or reported sale of certain holdings of GNPC in Jubilee Holdings. The Minister of Energy clashed with the board chair and the CEO of GNPC. We saw how things played out. Lawyer Chachuti Carter has some very interesting information about that particular episode. Stay with me. This week, we saw the majority in Parliament go at each other about the energy debt and whether the World Bank country directors assertion that the power purchase agreements signed by the actual administration increase this energy debt that we're dealing with. Lawyer Chachuti Carter disagrees. He lays the basis for his position here on Key Point. We will also talk about the Aker Energy deal, the botched Aker Energy deal, and some serious issues in there. Lawyer Chachuti Carter will talk about all of that, plus your views and your comments on Key Point. I am Alfred Okanse. Welcome. This is Key Point. Stay with us. We're back shortly. We're live on 3FM 92.7. We're back right after this quick break. My guest will be seated. We'll have a conversation.
Every father deserves to be celebrated. Let Melcom help you brighten Dad's big day. Enjoy a whopping 20% discount on your purchases from this Friday 16th to Sunday 18th. Put a smile on your daddy's face. Make this Father's Day even more special with Melcom. Terms and conditions apply. Melcom, where Ghana shops.
You need to ask yourself, where do you want to go? No matter who you are. Trust yourself. Doing big. Break the rules, not the laws. Keep pushing. Everything is possible. Trust yourself. Life is about confidence. Africa, it's your time.
Son, live with confidence.
Another week of exciting content right here on The Day Show. And this week, we're coming your way with one woman who can sing in Ghana, Tree, Arabic, Spanish, French, you name it.
Many das ni naneo. Eye ankasa na medo. Na ebanun sein odonkwe na mine denia.
You miss home or, well, LA, where you came from?
No.
Not at all?
No.
You never miss anywhere else you're coming from?
Not that much.
She'll blow us away, but she's not the only one. Ghanaian actress Jackie Appiah joins us as well. She has a new movie years down the line, over 20 years, right? And you're still this relevant. Is success something that you envisioned or you planned for, or this just happened?
I always thought that I would become a lawyer. Yes, I come from a family of lawyers.
Okay.
I love to act,
okay,
but I thought I was going to end up just in school or the church plays. I didn't know I was going to become an actress, even though I love to act.
And of course, beyond that, we talk about her life as an actress, and a popular one at that. Name 3 airlines.
KLM, British Airways, and Ghana Airways.
Where's the Ghana Airways one?
It's there. It's there.
Where?
We're back. We're coming back.
Don't miss The Day Show on TV3.
The Day Show, Sundays at 3 p.m. on TV3.
This program is sponsored by Onga.
I do not know whether she is cheating or being cheated on or intends to cheat, whatever.
I believe men are cheats by default,
Okay.
but my husband isn't. When he finally accepts that we take a stroll in our neighborhood, he also refuses to look at other women. I know men of today love big boobs and ass.
Is she all right?
In the world we are today, if you're not bad enough, you are not good enough.
She doesn't know herself. What is it that she's looking for? What preempted her to go into that marriage? I want to know all this.
There are knees that have not bowed to bow. So it is possible in our time.
That there is one good man standing.
There's a good man. And in fact, there are a lot of good men in Ghana. That's right. I can say with authority.
Confessions shows on Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. on TV3.
Brought to you by
MTN.
A life tragically lost. My name is Aiko Adade, the first runner-up for Ghana's Most Beautiful 2022. This Saturday, catch me on the Ladies Circle.
How can you easily identify the animal?
If the dog bites you, creates a wound, you're likely to get rabies after a few months. Less than 10 people have survived from rabies.
You said less than what?
10
people.
Not 10%.
Less than 10 people.
What? Have you ever wanted to cuddle with your pet over your boyfriend or partner?
Really? Dogs are not going to ask you unnecessary questions.
As we discuss issues at 6 p.m. only on TV3.
The Ladies Circle shows this Saturday at 6 p.m. on TV3.
Brought to you by Yaz Sanitary Pad,
Onga,
Yumvita,
MTN,
Woodin,
Nivea, for your shade of beautiful.
She calls herself the makeup junkie, and from the London School of Beauty, she's been able to establish herself as a very solid brand right here in Ghana and globally as well. There have been times where she was actually breathing the same air with top celebs like Kim Kardashian.
So these are, I put together a travel wardrobe edit.
Okay.
So basically I travel a lot.
Right.
And so now I've actually learned how to travel smaller, more compact, because I find that we pack a lot of stuff we don't end up wearing.
It's true. Don't miss this week's episode of Today's Woman right here on TV3, Saturday, 3 p.m. with me, Cookie T.
Today's Woman, all new season with Cookie T, shows Saturdays at 3 p.m. on TV3. Brought to you by Latex Foam, Visco.
Hello. How are you guys? We need to take the aspects, opinions about habits.
My name is Deonyan. As you grow, you learn big things like money management and all that.
The word of the week is habits. For me, I think I have both good and bad habits. It's for me singing, and sometimes I quite do it really loudly, and I don't know if it worries my neighbors. So this one can be maybe good or bad or
neutral. Yeah, neutral. So some of my good habits, I always love to stand up for my family members, especially my brothers, if I see that they're not being treated fairly. Yes, that's just an automatic thing for me.
We have a special game today.
It's charade. Presenting.
This Saturday at 10 a.m. right here on TV3.
Kids Arena shows Saturdays at 10 a.m. on TV3. Don't miss it.
Welcome back. This is Key Point on TV3. We're live on 3FM 92.7 Also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. Now, this week, we've seen what many people expected that would happen. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia going to, as it were, file his nomination and said a number of things. In that long speech, he did not talk about the economy. And many people are asking exactly why. Especially because it was on the basis of that he won the hearts of many Ghanaians going into the 2016 elections. The economy is at the heart of this election in 2024 and matters are rising. He's been the chair, or he is still, to find out, the chair of the economic management team of this economy. And so, yesterday, many were expecting to hear from him about this economy and many other things that he's been silent about. But he says he wants to take Ghana to the next level. Exactly what does that mean? We have Dr. Tia Abdul Kabiru Mahama. He's a technical advisor, Office of the Vice President. He, by extension, is a member of the Dr. Bawumia campaign team. Also, private legal practitioner Martin Kpebu. He is the convener of the Komipreko Reloaded demonstration. He is also a leader of one of 3 individual bondholder groups in this country. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for coming. Also, Roxanne Nelson Dafiamekpo is South Dai, Member of Parliament, also a private legal practitioner, will be joining us. And we will talk about a number of things happening in the court of law with Charles Bissiou, and then the latest that the NDC has been reacting to as well, related to James Gyakye and yesterday's ruling on his day-to-day appearance in court ahead of the Asin North by-election and how that impacts on the NDC's own strategy going forward. But we heard from the Vice President from that video we just played. Dr. Tia Abdul Kabiru Mahama. What does the Vice President, in fact, yesterday, that long speech declaring his intentions officially, we did not hear him touch on the economy. Why?
All right, so good morning to you, Mr. Alfred, and good morning to my senior brother, Lawyer Kpebu. And then good morning to your cherished viewers out there. I rightly said yesterday the Vice President submitted and filed his nomination form pursuant to Article 12 of the MPP's Constitution. The Vice President took that decision after extensive consultation with the hierarchy of the party, the rank and file of the party. Yeah. The Vice President took the opportunity after the filing of nomination to address the teaming supporters of the MPP that had gathered to support him file and submit his form. The Vice President, by that particular address, was to formally launch his campaign to kickstart the processes leading up to the election, first with the Special Electoral College and subsequently the main delegates conference. The Vice President touched on a number of issues. He spoke about the fact that, he started with his humble beginning from Sakasaka GSS to the Tamal Senior High School, and where he proceeded to Oxford University. The Vice President talked about hard work, where he had to fend for himself by doing labor. The Vice President was able to connect to the people, where he noted that he had been engaged in by-day work in order to take care of himself. The Vice President was also clear that the government has achieved some successes despite the current economic challenge. And if people wonder if the Vice President did not speak about the economy, I wonder what the person means when the Vice President talk about the over 2 million jobs being created. It's something about the economy. I don't know when they say that he did not talk about the economy. When the Vice President mentioned that this government has achieved massive infrastructure development and you're planning for food and jobs, they are all part of the economy. The digitization of the economy is part of the economy. I don't know what they mean when the Vice President stated that irrespective of these challenges, this government for the first time has achieved a number of successes and the relative stability that has been brought. One rough, people may be expecting the Vice President to mount a podium. I won't even say it was a long speech. I mean, a 10-page speech running for about 12 minutes.
10 pages,
yeah,
12 minutes is a long speech.
12 minutes.
I don't know how many minutes you want the Vice President to speak before you describe it as a long speech.
Alfred,
12 minutes of the Ghanaian people's time is a long speech, 10 pages. And when I'm talking about he not talking about the economy, I'm talking about the fact that the acknowledgement of the fact that we are in crisis. We are an economy that is in crisis. We've gone to the IMF. And he's no mean a person. One time described as economic wizard, whiz kid. You know, he won the heart of the Ghanaian people based on the kind of presentations that he made. And at the time, his own understanding of the state of the economy, okay? And then also some of the things that he proposed and stood for. And so, yes, some reference was made about certain things that have been done, but the current state of the economy, which he is presiding over as the chair of the economic management team, which is in crisis and is at the IMF for healing, he did not talk about that specifically. That's what I'm talking about.
And that's what the Vice President chose the occasion to address certain issues he felt they were pertinent. And the Vice President has also indicated that a detailed manifesto is going to be presented. So that is not to suggest that the Vice President did not or was run away from speaking about the economy. The Vice President, even on the back of the challenges, at the heat of the crisis, he spoke about the economy. So, I don't see the need why the Vice President, again, will mount another lecture on the economy when the opportunity for him was to present or to announce to Party Faithful that he has submitted his form. So that is the context within which I'm also making the point that those calls, with the greatest of respect, they are not calls founded on good faith, because if you expect the Vice President to mount a whole lecture on the economy at an opportunity that he was given to present his form, it is a foul call to make. But that said, the Vice President would speak about the economy. The Vice President is going to campaign on the economy. The Vice President is going to propose measures. And in any case, the challenges that we had faced, the President together with the team members, as form of collective responsibility, are doing everything to bring back normalcy to the economy. We have some relative stability in the economy now. Prices of goods are coming down.
Hold on. Prices of goods are coming down where? What kind of prices? What kind of goods are you talking about?
The basic measure of the general prices of goods is inflation. From 53 to 41. You cannot tell me it is not a reflection of the market. Right?
But, you know what? No. But you know you are an economist, so I would want you to appreciate the fact that inflation going down, and I know you know this, so I want you to be very frank with the Ghanaian people. Inflation going down, in figurative terms, does not, you see, you are smiling, it does not necessarily mean that prices of goods and services are going down on the market. You know this. I don't want you to present that inflation is going down. So when I go to the market, price of goods and services have gone down. That is not the reality that the Ghanaian people who are watching you this morning are facing.
Fred, if you will give an opportunity, if you will want an education without taking a stance, okay, I will.
Wanting education?
Of course. You are holding a point. You are holding a view, which I think is totally different.
But do you know that when you go to the market, prices of goods and services haven't gone down.
And now I'll tell you why I'm saying it has gone down. So it is a question you've asked. Unless, of course, you are taking a position.
No.
If you are taking a position that prices of goods haven't gone down and any explanation I'm proffering you will not take it, then that is well and good. But my duty is to explain to you, to ask questions, for me to explain to you why I am saying that prices of goods and services are going down. You may pinpoint a specific item to which prices of it hasn't gone down or is going up. But I am saying that the general prices, because we are dealing with a whole lot of goods. If I go to the market, for instance, we pay for transportation. Is that not price of a services that we're paying? It was recently reduced by 10%. Is that not reduction?
No, did you say that transport was reduced recently by 10%?
I am saying that
that's not true. That's not
can I please let me make my point.
Dr. Gabriel, let me tell you this. The reason why I realize that you are not in touch with the realities on the ground. So maybe I would rather give you the education about the state of affairs, the reality of the situation on the ground. There was an announcement of an expected reduction in transport fares. I still patronize transport, and I know you don't. That's why you believe that there was a decrease in transport fares. It didn't happen. The GPRT people said that, you know what, there's no basis for that reduction because they are still experiencing an increase in the spare parts and other items that impact on their work. And so they would not heed to that directive for a reduction in transport fares. So it did not happen. So what you're saying is not true.
So now, no one gave them a directive. It is not true that they were given a directive. That's what I'm saying, that you are confusing and convoluting the issues. One, no one gave the transport union any directive. No, they came out with a statement. Please, let me make your point. They came out with a statement.
The leadership of the GPLTU.
Can I make a point? I gave you the opportunity.
I'm only telling you.
You are heckling me. I gave you the opportunity to make your point, Alfred. I gave you the opportunity to make your point. So when I'm making my point, with the greatest of respect, I expect you to allow me make my point. Okay? The transport union came out with a statement announcing a 10% reduction in transportation price. No one gave them a directive. Okay, let's even take it, they didn't reduce it. Prices at the pump reduced from 21 Ghana cedi per litre when you were announcing it to something like 13 Ghana cedi per litre. Okay, this is verifiable at the pumps. Is that not a price of a good? All right, so if you tell me that prices of goods are not coming down and you are fixating yourself on one specific issue. You are not being frank and fair to the issue. So let us discuss the issue without a stand or without taking a very rigid stand on this issue. For instance, fuel prices have come down from 21 Ghana cedi per litre to 13 Ghana cedi per litre. Anyone can go to the pump and verify that. So let us have the discussion without this, extreme position on the issue. So that is a fact.
Okay. So because you make reference to transport fares going down, I needed to let you know that that's not true. That's number one. I think that is established and we all accept that it didn't happen, correct? The second one is that you and I, and I'm sure every other person seated here and those watching, appreciate what basic economics means. And so if, as an economist, you know that inflation going down in figurative terms does not necessarily mean that prices of goods and services are going down on the market. Inflation essentially means, if it's going down, the rate at which prices of goods and services going up in price has reduced. It does not necessarily mean, and you are an economist, I know you know this, it does not necessarily mean that price of goods and services are going down. It only talks about, in figurative terms, the rate at which prices of goods and services in price are going up has reduced.
So
the government statistician takes time to explain these things. And as an economist, I know you know this.
All right, so the point I'm making is that if you have inflation of 53%, okay, never in the history of the country, unless in the era of the 1980s that we have disinflation, okay, where you have prices being 10 Ghana cedi, the following day is going to be 9 Ghana cedi, okay. So we all understand that. Never in the history, not even in the NDC government, that we have had prices of goods reducing as in the sense coming down from its previous value of 9 Ghana cedi to 8%. Okay, then that is the period that you have a disinflationary pressure. And no economy will want such a tendency. Okay, so I mean, we've gone past that, but when we say prices of goods and services are coming down, we are basically speaking the same language. And when something was 10 Ghana cedi yesterday and the pace of increase was around 50%, now the pace of increase is 40%. That is what we mean, and that is what we measure the health of the economy with. Okay, so when we are speaking, we all understand that this is the context within which we speak it. Unless, of course, someone here can give me any data to point to the fact that within the Fourth Republic, we woke up in a particular day and an item that was costing us 8 Ghana cedi has become 5 Ghana cedi. That has never happened because there's a general principle in economy that prices are not sticky downwards. Okay, this is a tried learning we all know. So when we are making this point, we need to establish that as well. 2, when we say prices are not coming, I'll give you an example, one single example that the price of fuel has come down. Okay, that is prices coming down. So we may disagree on specific items in the basket, which I am the first person to admit that some items in the basket may not be experiencing downward prices, but some items in the basket are experiencing downward prices. So when we are asked to educate the people on this, the fidelity to the facts, and not to push an agenda that suggests that this government hasn't done anything, will not be fair to the narratives. So that is the point I want to make in this regard, that the Vice President was given opportunity. He spoke about a number of issues. He promised Ghanaians that he's coming to present a detailed manifesto to support his bid or to become the President of the Republic of Ghana. The Vice President is not running away from the record. As part, he understands that there's a collective responsibility as a member of the government. When we know that as Vice President, the buck does not stop with him. Okay, that is the reason why he's coming out as his own man with his own vision, in order no two individuals are the same and no two governments will ever be the same. President Mills said he would consult the former president 24 hours, but his path was different from that of President Rawlings. John Mahama, who came, was a different person from President Mills. Nana Akufo-Addo is a different president. President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, inshallah, will be Bawumia will be a different president. So that we have to put in context, that we cannot be bogged down by the fact that Bawumia was a member of the NPP or is a member of the NPP, he's been part of the NPP government, he's part of cabinet, he's part of the economic management team. That record he will defend.
Okay, is he still the chair of the economic management team?
He is still the chairman of the economic management team.
Okay, Martin Pebo, let me bring you in at this point, and let me bring in now, in fact, acknowledge the presence of Nelson Roxon Dafiamepo Sauda, Member of Parliament. He's private legal practitioner as well. Thank you so much for coming. Good morning.
It's my pleasure.
Okay. Lawyer Martin Pebo, talk about the cost of living, the state of affairs. The chair of the economic management team has declared his intentions to lead the country as president of the Republic of Ghana. He is vice president. And you've just heard Dr. Mahama vehemently defend his position that the vice president is the one to lead us to the next level.
Okay, I'm sure we've said it in the past, so it's no news for me to say that the vice president certainly is not cut for the presidency at all.
Why do you say that?
Bawumia is not cut for this presidency. He doesn't have what it takes to be president of Ghana. Let's not disencade ourselves, all right?
What do you mean?
Yes, I'll explain shortly. By his track record. So even let's start. You know, as we're talking about this, yesterday as I was coming, there was a lawyer who said something on our platform. This thing about Dante and the hottest places in hell being reserved
Dante's
for
Inferno.
Yes, exactly. They say the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in times of great moral crisis, maintain their neutrality. You see, that's very poignant and very suitable for circumstances in Ghana here. So let me repeat. It says, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in times of great moral crisis, maintain their neutrality. So it ties in with what Dr. Bawumia is doing now, asking us, after throwing us into a deep economic crater, the cost of living crisis we are suffering, everything we are suffering, He has the nerve to come back and say he wants to be president. I mean, come on, let's be very serious. It's like a joke, total joke. It's like we are being taken for fools. Because these were the very things he sang in 2016, and we voted for him. And then he comes, he has not been able to do jack, and he comes to say that, oh, now he wants to be president. Birds of a feather flock together. Look, if Bawumia wasn't like a Akufo-Addo, the two of them couldn't have coexisted in peace and in so much harmony. They are of the same mind. Look, so the way you've seen President Akufo-Addo, that's the same way Bawumia is going to turn out to be. Trust me, there will be no difference. If they were different, if Bawumia was very strong, if he was that upright, he wouldn't let corruption flourish in Ghana and all that, he would have fought President Akufo-Addo. He would have resigned. But to the extent that he's kept quiet, he stayed in the ship and actually steered the ship to sink. Please, look, it's just a joke. It's a joke. Sometimes I look at it, I'm like, wow, politics has space for a lot of jokes, eh? A lot of jokes. Look, don't kid me. There's no way. This man is not cut for president. Look, let me show you one practical example. Remember the case I've repeated ad nauseum, and it's good we repeat because it's track record. I told you this story where Dr. Anam Zoya, former CEO of the Northern Development Authority, reported to Bawumia that public officers were going to steal money. As record, he wrote to the president. He
reported this to the president.
Yes, copied Bawumia, public officers were going to steal money. 5.5 months, Bawumia did nothing. Such a man, he's coming to protect.
I know this is a case that you followed quite closely. So you have copies of the letters.
Oh, we've done it. It's all out there. Yes, and Dr. Anam Zoya
you
is
have
still
the
alive.
copies of those letters.
Yes, that's why I took to the special prosecutor. Yes.
So it wasn't addressed to them. So you see, when a lawyer is speaking,
so you shouldn't do anything. When public funds are about to be stolen and you are copied, then you say you don't have to do anything.
Is that the country that we are running?
Wow.
Okay. Is that the country that we are running?
Very good. So you say he was just copied. When evil, good people who see evil and do nothing, they are also
I'll even tell you what he's done. Hold on. I'll even tell him what he's done.
In this particular case?
In this particular case, I'll even tell him what he's done. So the statement
it's too late. I have to report to the special prosecutor. Special prosecutor had to take extra steps. Even Kweku Baku's newspaper, he had to come and Kweku Baku jumped to the defense of the public purse. They did 2 publications, and then special prosecutor jumped in, and then they stopped the payment of the money controller. Okay. Bawumia was sleeping.
Lawyer, I'll come to you, but what specifically, what did the vice president do?
One, okay. When the issue of the report by number, even that issue, okay, there's even the different part of it that I don't have to discuss. The issue about Dr. Anam Zoya writing that particular letter to the president, raising issue about the NDA, problems and how some people had used a subsistence contract to change certain documents, okay, with his name still as part of those people who approved that document. That issue, the presidency was the person that was petitioned. The vice president was copied in this communication. One, someone with a communication and is being copied, his duty is to inform if the president's attention has not been drawn to it. His duty is to draw the attention of the president to it. That is one. The vice president has had meetings with management of NDA over this issue, following with some major, the decision to fire some of these people, okay, at the NDA was on the back of those discussions that the vice president had with those people. Okay, the CEO of the CEO involved has been relieved of his duty. Okay,
he resigned.
It's important. If you say he was if you say he was relieved of his post, there are 2 different things.
I
actually wanted him to really speak exactly.
Mr. Rox, I've been asked to come.
Dr. Mama.
So if you are not asked me to come, I'm not coming. It's okay.
So I wanted you to hear from you on this. But there's a difference between somebody being relieved of his post and the person resigning. Those are 2 different things.
Yes, excellent.
So if the CEO resigned, that's not he being relieved of his post.
It's a deputy who was sacked. Yeah,
those
they
are
were
two different
terminated.
things.
And that was after the
so can I
OSP had presented the case. So by March this year, everything had been done, so they knew they were going to be put before court. It's not Bawumia, so there's nothing. As far as I'm concerned, look, he lost his chance, went for 5.5 months. The letter was on his desk, and he was still going around town doing propaganda. When the fundamentals are weak, the city were exposed.
You see,
right?
when Francis Essien resigned for his post, he's been forced to resign.
Please, I would get you in when I want you.
That's okay. That's all right.
I invited you in because there was some reaction that I wanted.
That's okay. Very, very well respected.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so I was making the point that for me, I'm using practical examples. I have nothing against him. I'm just a Ghanaian, right? So if you come, just like the way I believed in President Akufo-Addo in 2016, and I thought Mahama was the devil, if you come and you have a practical record that shows that you can do something better, why not? You're the one I'll support. But what I'm saying is that Bawumia hasn't shown that he can be president. Please, that one, let's not waste time on it. You see, as part of his speech, then he repeated that, he's going to make sure about food security. I said, what food security? 2016, is that the same thing? That was the core of the message. Look, and this thing, let's not be tired of repetition, because as many times as the topic comes, it's the same answer. 2016, what resonated with me was, look, nuisance taxes. That's why he and President Akufo-Addo said that the NDC was engaged in nuisance taxes and that they were going to move from taxation to production. And then the core, you see, the excessive importation, food. You're looking at rice, oil, what do you call it, poultry, fish. These things have killed us. So they said, no, 18 months, they will transform everything. So when you come back, how many years? In the 7th year, and you're coming back to say that you will do food security. I'm like, whose food security? Whose food security? When you've had 6.5 years, you've spanned the opportunity, where even the numbers have gone up, and then you come back and say you will do food security. It's a joke. Look, let's not waste our time on this. And I'll show you the practical example. Look, if they weren't the same, this man couldn't have coexisted with President Akufo-Addo. I think the corruption stops at only President Akufo-Addo's office. But it goes to his office as well. Otherwise, they couldn't have existed. We are not kids. We are not kids. Look, you see how when you see your child being involved in wayward behavior, you say you will not tolerate this. You will not tolerate this. So you take steps to discipline the child, etc. Even some parents will even kick the child out of the home. It will take neighbors to bring the child back, etc. But the way Bawumia is being quiet, trust me, and you think the campaign, how is he going to fund the campaign? How is he going to fund the campaign if he makes noise? Master, let's not kid ourselves, please. This type of thing is, well, you know, politics, because they say we shouldn't be bigots. Dr. Mahama can make his point, but please, for me, it doesn't wash at all. It's just that it sometimes beats my imagination. I'm like, is that the same man? The best would have been that, look, Bawumia will go, leave Alan. He came and met Alan. Let Alan take his chance. Then Bawumia will go. Then after a while, maybe, 8 years, and he comes back. After all, he still has a bit of age on his side. But to have steered this ship into such a deep crater, you said he's still chairman of the economic management team, right? Last month, inflation went up. It's now 42.2%. The previous month, it had gone down slightly to 41 point something, right? Last month, it's gone inched up. And then you mentioned, what do you call it?
Food prices.
Then you also mentioned that petrol went down. What else could have happened? Is it your magic? Is it international prices? Do you control prices of petrol in Ghana?
Nothing to do with this.
Rather, the one you have control over, we pay up the petrol, the price build up. About 50% of it is taxes. That's where you had control over. When the citizens cried and cried that reduced them, you didn't do anything. It's only the price stabilization margin that was taken off for about 2 months, somewhere around November, December last year, right? A few months. Yes. Then that's it. But the major part, the price build up of fuel in Ghana, it's about 50% is taxes. You control it. Somebody that you insulted your predecessor that he was involved in nuisance taxes, when you come, it will be a movement from taxation to production. You refuse to reduce fuel prices to any appreciable level. It's the world market dynamics and everything that finally brought it down, right? So, and you know that like the
government said good for oil played a role.
The IMF said it should be reviewed.
When you ask the question,
the IMF said it should be reviewed. And have you seen the companies that have pulled out? You see, in the last 2 weeks, some of the companies have pulled out. Yes, because they say even the processes leading to that whole scheme are opaque and they are smirking of corruption and other things, right? So you see in the IMF document, you read, it says it's being reviewed. So the point now, let's come back to the fuel, because that's very central. When the prices came down, how much did they reflect in general reduction in food, general goods? What is the correlation between the prices coming down and reduction in food prices and other things? What was because you know that usually fuel affects almost everything. So we expected that when it came down from 21 to 13 cedis and now even 11 cedis 50 pesos, I mean that range. So let's say between 11 cedis 50 pesos to about 12 cedis 45 pesos.
That depends on the OMC too.
Yes, that's so. What's the reflection in the reduction in general goods and prices? No, not mine. Like we keep crying every day. You buy a tuber of yam for about 40 Ghana cedis. One tuber of yam, 40 Ghana cedis. What do you call it? Dental kit. So you say I shouldn't mention one name. So what would we say? The toothpaste. Toothpaste. 20 Ghana. Ask the young girls. That's the one I should. They say I shouldn't. We are speaking Ghanaian English. Let's be proud of Ghanaian English because we
you just say toothpaste. We all know what it means.
Okay.
No, please. We beg.
Look, you know that sometimes when I look at the campaign to remove taxes on sanitary pads, and this government is not listening, I'm like, oh my God, are these the same people? You were insulting the previous regime for taxes on condoms and that. What's the difference between condom and sanitary pads? You should have yanked that thing out a long time ago, right? Yes. So you go on and on and on. Look, people are dying, So this politics you are doing here, the best you could have just done. But on that occasion, what you needed to have done was to have said, people of Ghana, I'm truly sorry that I just am not up to scratch. I can't cut master. I don't know practically what it takes. I'm sorry. And that I don't intend to run for president. I think I should go back into opposition, learn a bit, and then in 8 years, I'll come back and take a shot.
Okay, my people, thank you. Honorable Roxanne Nelson, this is the resolve of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia that regardless of the state of affairs, he is the man to take Ghana to the next level. This is in his own words yesterday, that he wants to take Ghana to the next level. He's still chair of the economic management team as we speak. Why do you contest that?
Thank you very much. Morning to my brothers, and of course, good morning to my people in Southern and to yourself. You see, the Bawumia is a man. So I'm very happy when you introduced him by saying that he was previously described as an economic whiz-kid. Because when you are a whiz-kid, it ought not to leave you. You have to die with it. Because it's an accolade. But hold on.
Has he left him?
But you said so. You said previously described. Nobody describes him as an economic whiz-kid anymore. So that is the summary of the man that he's become. Look at what is happening with the National Cathedral. Have you ever heard the Vice President speak about it?
The National Cathedral?
Yes. Look at the mess that the National Cathedral is in. As the second gentleman in this land, have you ever heard him comment? Look, his slogan is that it is possible. It is possible. To do what? He says he will take Ghana to the next level. You see, the next level doesn't mean it will be up. It is the next level below. That is why he says that it is possible that he will take us to the next level below.
That's how you understand.
That is not my understanding. That is English. Next level means up or below.
Okay,
and I'm saying that the next level Dr. Bawumia speaks of is to sink us much lower than we have sunk. Because Martin spoke about the man's conduct and achievement so far. And he speaks to the fact that if he is placed in the helm of affairs, we'll be worse off. And I'll give you a few indices. I hold in my hand the special audit report of the COVID-19 expenditure between 2020 and 2022. It is rotten to the core. It is rotten to the core. the monies the office of the president as well as the Ministry of Finance have expended, and the manner that they expended it, under the watch of Dr. Bawumia as the head of the economic management team. And this man says that you take us to the next level below. And I believe him. Because he can't lead the country. Listen to his co-contestant, Kennedy Ejapong, campaign. He says that the people who have taken us to the IMF, we cannot rely on them to lead the party going forward. That again is another summary of the performance of himself, the president, and the finance minister. So we are in a very, very serious situation. And yet Dr. Bawumia very often would trivialize the matters. Last month, we had to borrow as a nation to fight food security. Food. We are told that we are under food insecurity. So we have to go and borrow money to fight it so that we ensure food security as part of a West African campaign. Ghana. He's the deputy to the president who has introduced a program called Planting for Food and for Jobs and Planting for Food and for Export. We've sunk millions of Ghana cedis into billions now into that program. And yet, as a nation, we are still threatened by food security. And you are saying this doesn't bother you? And the man who is in charge says that he should be properly placed in charge? Let's speak of one factory, one district, one factory program.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the success story there?
Well, Katie Amon says 126 factories are running.
They are running at where?
We
have hold on. We have just about 261 or 64 districts and assemblies. So if we have 161 factories, that is, I mean, just about 100 districts who do not have factories under this program. Show me the districts in this country that have one district, 161 of them. Show me.
It says 126.
It says 126.
Yes.
So let me say half. I mean, they turn out these statistics. People do a fact check. They go to their ground and they go and meet bush. They're still not learning from this approach. I'm a friend to the trade committee. These matters come to the trade committee very often. When you go and do a fact check on the ground, they give the names of the companies. When you go and do a fact check, the factories have been taken up.
So are you saying that there's never been seen any factory running under this one?
They should tell us the success story truthfully. That's what I'm saying. But you don't come and mention a factory that is under construction, that's not completed, and clearly abandoned, and mention it as a success story. That is not the kind of success you told us.
You say it's in the pipeline. Some of them are still
what pipeline? How long is the pipe? That these things are never rolling out. And yet money keeps being pumped into these projects. This government told us that they have constructed 10,000 kilometers of roads. When we put them to street proof, they actually said that when you seal a pothole, it means construction in this country. When you seal a pothole, it means construction. And so they factored it. I don't know how long a pothole is, but they factored it to 10,000 roads that they've constructed. And we've swallowed it. We haven't interrogated that matter.
But you members of parliament, this statement was made before you.
Yes.
In parliament.
So we expose the fallacies. But you journalists haven't pursued it.
Oh, we have. The reason why I'm asking you is when this statement was made before the House, I remember the likes of Gavin Kwame Agboja and others raising specific questions about the details of.
So when the details were provided,
came with
then
the
they
details.
said that, oh, if a porthole ceiling, a porthole that is about 2 feet in diameter, when you seal it, to them, that is construction. So they measure and add it to, so they all add up to the 10,000. It's such a ridiculous thing. Because, look, when you come to my constituency, every feeder road is in a deplorable state.
South Dye?
South Dye, every single feeder road.
Normally they make reference to the Peki Road. I think I was on it last
The
week.
Peki Road is the famous Eastern Corridor.
Peki is in your constituency?
Yes, it is bifurcating my constituency. It's traveling all the way to Paga. I am happy it's being done, that portion. But that's about it. All the feeder, it's as if the Department of Feeder Road has gone to sleep. So we need to be very serious about these matters. And I'll get to my brother. In 2018, the government came to Parliament. We promised to deliver a single-digit inflation, and we delivered. There was a chorus. Today, he's waxing lyrically about a 42.2 inflation rate. What? No.
You think that's an achievement you should be talking about?
How? How is it that inflation at 42.2 an achievement? You are not ashamed to even speak about it. You can actually say that you are doing well. Inflation. Cement is 100 Ghana cedis now, depending on the distance the distance from the production point. Cement from 22 cedis. It is now 100 Ghana cedis. Calculate the inflation rate within the past 6 years for cement alone. By this, every single government project awarded within the past 6 years, the cost has multiplied by that margin. That is why every single project is being repackaged, revalued, and more. That is the economic impact that has on the public purse. So, as for Dr. Bawumia, my brother here has again made the point that he's not fit for the presidency.
That's your verdict.
But you see, the man is already there as a deputy. So we must ensure that he doesn't assume the topmost position. Because when we speak of the presidency, it's constituted by the president, the vice, that's the presidency, and perhaps the chief of staff, that's the chief administrator. So Dr. Bawumia is in the thick of affairs. When things were slightly good in the early days of the regime, they were all over the place. And said that was due to their economic acumen. CD has moved from a 4.8 to the dollar to 15 in this country. To 15.
Well, now it's 11.50, 11.45.
That is the problem we have. Because you see, to even move from 5 to 11 is unacceptable. So now we are touting the achievement that is dropped from 15 to 11. That's an achievement. When you have allowed the thing to balloon out of check. So this will be my preliminary comments on the decision by Dr. Bawumia to say that we'll take Ghana to the next level below. We must not allow that to happen. Thank you.
It's early days yet for his campaign. The preliminary comments are quite extensive enough. It gives some detail of exactly what your own position is. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. And Dr. Mama, I want you to speak to what Dr. Bawumia means by the next level. Because I think the understanding on this table It's a very interesting one. That the next level is the next level below, not above the situation we are faced with. We'll be back shortly after this quick break.
Yeah, in trouble.
This is Key Point. Stay with us.
Out of the week. Place bets and hit the jackpot. Log into the OneXBet account. Click on the Take Part button. Place bet and take part in the jackpot draw. Give your luck a chance. Use promo code to get a bonus on your first deposit.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the Gaming Commission of Ghana. Bet responsibly, not for persons below 18 years. Gambling can be addictive.
My people, Philadelphia. Our very own Adansi Travels is 10 years old.
Then this will be a 10-day stay.
That is right. We are going on a 10-day adventure in Dubai on a chartered Emirates flight full of Adansi travelers from 10th to 19th August. And starting from $1,650, you can be part of this Adansi-licious 10th anniversary tour. The rate covers flight, hotel accommodation, breakfast, visa, airport transfer, tours, and Adansi at 10 mega party at Dubai Desert Camp with the legendary Samini.
Adansi Travelers Tour. It survived the 10th anniversary. That will be a part of this.
You can pay a minimum of $500 to book your seat and pay the rest till 15th July. Contact Adansi Travels now on 0595 500 817 or 055 631 0404 to book your spots now. Adansi Travels. Feel life's beauty.
Get ready to splash this summer at the hottest event of the season. It's the Date Rush Pool Party, coming to you live on Saturday, 8th July at the breathtaking Pleasant Gardens Jolu. Get ready to groove to the infectious beats of the sensational Dope Nation, the energetic Prince of the Street, LaRusso, the fast-rising TV3 Mentor X winner, DSL, who will be setting the stage on fire, along with the baddest DJs, DJ Faculty, DJ Abiam, DJ Phil, and more. So put on your trendiest swimwear, grab your friends, and dive into an epic celebration of summer. Remember, it's Saturday, 8th July at the stunning Pleasant Gardens Jolu. Doors open at 3 p.m. Don't miss out on this unforgettable experience. Tickets are going for a cool 50 Ghana cedis. For tickets, dial star 713 star 33 star 25 hash. To purchase or make a reservation, call 0244 405027. Date Rush Pool Party, the summer event you don't want to miss.
Welcome back. This is Key Point on TV3. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also live on DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. Dr. Mahama is with the Vice President's office by extension. He's a member of the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's campaign team. Lawyer Martin Pebo is here. Nelson Roxon Dafia-Mekpo is MP for South Dai. He's a member of a number of committees in Parliament as well. Dr. Mahama, just a quick one on this. What exactly did the Vice President mean when he said that he's going to take Ghana to the next level?
All right, thank you very much, Alfred.
Below or above?
Yeah, let me say that anyone who says the next level...
Let him clarify.
Anyone who says next level either means below or above should better go back to consult his DVD player. That is a basic... That will help you what means by previous and next. That will give you an essence of what English what means by previous and next. So they don't use that interchangeable. Previous is different from next. So if you say this is English on national television and you say that next level
what it means by next.
No, I'm just trying to clarify. Someone has made a point and he made it to their listening public, and it's important that I set aside that mindset that whenever something is said next, it either means below or above. That is a warped understanding of what next means. So I need to put that on record. So that is the first thing I want to put on record. The second fact I want to put there, I didn't think that our discussion there, if we had gone into the comedy theater, it would have been better because some of the comments are very comical. And they are comical in the sense that we are asked to discuss a presidential candidate of the MPP. If we're asked to discuss the presidential candidate of the NDC, and we are going through this particular route, I will not sit down here to discuss the presidential candidate of the NDC with such kind of comedy. I will not do that because I think issues of governance are most important. They are a very serious issue. When we're asked to discuss them, we have to discuss them. He mentioned about NDA, and when he went to the witness board, he could not speak a word. Mr. Kwebo went to the witness board, he could not say a word. He could not say jack. So let's well, the vice president being to the next level, let me take opportunity to again explain. The vice president mentioned yesterday that some foundation has been built by this government, that we have economic challenges and the government have taken measures to steer us out of the economic challenges. Some of the measures include you mentioned it, and when he mentioned it, you said it has not made an impact, and you came back to ask him what impact is good for oil making. But the vice president mentioned yesterday that we want to leverage on that, efficient and maximizing the returns on our natural resources. We've produced gold, we've produced aluminium, we've bauxite in this country for a long time. How do we maximize the returns or the benefits of these natural resources? That was what he mean. One of the measures he mean by next level. The vice president also mentioned that we have to leverage on science, data, and technology in our agriculture activity. We've done agriculture being largely rain-fed. Government has increased the number of land or acres of land that is under irrigation, but that is still not enough. We still need to employ irrigation, deploy data and science to making sure that our agriculture is very vibrant. That is the next level. The vice president did not stop at that. The vice president made categorically clear that we need to use digitization again in our healthcare service delivery, in our education, in our public service provision. And the vice president had given us the breadth of this vision when he led the process, for us to have digitization, the Ghana Pay Universal QR system, which is the first in Africa. The Universal QR system is the first in Africa. Give me the country. Give me the country. So when I say hi, when I make a question, you give me. Kenya's QR system is not. Kenya came with M-Pesa. Okay, Kenya came with M-Pesa, which was not even complete interoperability. So it is not that we don't have this. It is not the first.
They did years ahead of us.
Please, let me. Kenya is not the first. And if you don't, go back to revise your notes on that. Okay, that is at the next level. The vice president was equally clear in his mind that we will need to do something about. Enhance the drone-driven service of medical supplies. Okay, the vice president means that what he means by next level. The vice president, again, I want to stress on that. He proposed the idea of enhancing the inclusiveness of our economic growth. We have disparity, the digital gap between the north and the south, between the rich and the poor, the have and the have not. Okay, we will need to do something about that. That's what he means by next level. The vice president has a clear vision on what he wants to do. It is not for the NDC or the propaganda of the NDC or people who are pushing a certain agenda against the vice president to dictate whether he should decide to become a president or to put himself to become a president or not. It is for the Ghanaian people to decide that. And if anyone thinks that he best fit than the vice president or he knows of a person, I'm even surprised that my brother is saying that, he's taken Alan Kyeremanteng out of the government. Alan Kyeremanteng is not part of the government. He should have come. He should have allowed Alan Kyeremanteng to come. Then he can come later after 8 years because he still have time. You can't be speaking from both sides of the mouth. You cannot be doing that. Okay, Mr. Roxon mentioned about government has not done it. Again, he's also speaking from both sides of the mouth. On one breath, government has done so in my constituency. Government is constructing this route. On another breath, the government has not done anything.
You haven't listened to me.
Okay, so
no. Because
you make reference to
I was not interjecting when you made your point.
Yeah, but you
refer to the government, and I'm here to represent the government.
Okay, yes.
So please,
round up.
You can do that. You can make your point. You can respond to it. So this double standard, this hypocrisy of political actors, of people empaneled to discuss nationalism, this double standard must stop.
Okay,
if we don't do that, look, we are treading a path that is so dangerous that people are looking up to us, okay, to educate them. But when we take positions that are pedestrian, we take positions that are not speaking to the issue, we take positions that ordinary people do not, they do not address the concerns of ordinary people.
Dr. Kabir Mama, what position do you describe as pedestrian on this platform that has been made this morning?
Yes. This morning, my senior brother here has stated on this platform, unguarded, without any form of moderation from the host. He allowed him on a free ride, okay, to insult virtually the vice president, insult virtually the president.
I said it's not cut for president. What is insulting about it?
So, hold on a minute. What do you describe as an insult? And then you say that I watched on without... What
you watched on without...
No, wait. What specifically did he say that you describe as an insult?
I said it's not cut for president.
Wait, hold on. What specifically did he say that you say I allowed him to insult?
You allow him to state that the vice president was given a copy of a letter, and you know, a copy. No, let me make you ask me a question.
That's an insult?
Then let me come to tell why it's an insult, okay? Unless, of course, you want to, you are bringing me here to, as it were, decide how I should answer your question.
No.
Okay, if that is not your goal, Alfred, if that's not your goal, I think it is only proper. Look, when these people are presenting,
don't worry, hold on. I want you to.
I'm not addressing it to you. I'm addressing it to the host.
Okay, let
us be orderly in this regard.
Mama, I want to understand what exactly is the insult that you say I allowed on the presidency without moderation, please.
Mr. Martin Kpebu, in his submission, mentioned that the vice president is the same person. He is in fact, in the lack of better word, he said that he is not cut for the presidency, and that when he was given a letter, he sat down and watched corruption go on, as if to say that the vice president doesn't care about the Republic of Ghana. Okay, that was the point you made, and you went ahead. You went ahead to suggest that the vice president has promised Ghanaians A, B, C, D, and has not fulfilled it.
And that's an insult.
Of course, that is an insult. That's an insult because one, he knows the vice president who is there, and he said that the vice president, he knows the vice president who is, Dr. Mahmoud, he knows his personal character.
Okay, I don't know.
If you don't even know someone, if you don't even know, how do you pass a verdict? How do you even pass a verdict? How do you even pass a verdict on his personal character?
Anyway, Dr. Kabir Mama, thank you. I wanted the viewers and the panel members and the cameramen here to know exactly what you meant by the insults that I allowed to pass without moderation. I think we are better judges of what you describe as an insult. Honorable Roxanne Dafiamepo.
Yes.
You wanted to respond a quick one.
Yes.
I don't need a long one on this.
Yes. First of all, I never said Dame hasn't done anything in my constituency. I never said so. I said every single feeder road in my constituency is in a deplorable state. Construction ongoing, abandoned. I mentioned the almighty Eastern Corridor that is passing through my constituency. So if you want to, these are facts. And I think that you will not be emotional so that we respond to the issues factually. Don't be emotional. Don't be emotional. Every single thing I've stated on this table is the fact. I've referenced documents. If you want to dispute it, use other documents to dispute the things I have said. But don't say that the things we are saying are pedestrian and comical. No, they go to the core of the mandate of the office the man seeks to occupy. You sought to explain the meaning I have placed on the next level. And you did a poor job. When you are on a pedestal and you are in a decline, the next level is the level below.
Yes, that's all.
This is an economy in a decline. And you are saying that you are taking us to the next level. And you think that I should say that it's a positive upward movement? No, we are in a decline. Or when you are on a single continuum, which is a straight line, then your use of previous and next will be applicable. The previous will be the one behind you. But we are not on a single continuum. We're on a pedestal seeking to go up. Meanwhile, the movement is in a decline. We are decreasing in terms of our economic worth. And your boss is saying he's taking us to the next level. And you are struggling with me with this understanding. He should have said that he will take us out of the doldrums.
Okay. There was a point about the specific reference to infrastructure and roads that you had.
Yes.
That was what you wanted to respond to.
Yes.
I thought that was.
No.
I don't want you to.
So in my constituency.
Don't spend
So in my constituency.
Too much time on this because I need to move on.
Peki to Anum feeder road, 5 kilometers, is in a deplorable state.
Okay.
Todome to Germany, 23.1 kilometers, is in a deplorable state. Peki Agbate through Chibu to Chate is in a deplorable state. Peve to Peveton, where Ghana Water is pumping station to Sefo, is in a deplorable state. Wow. So these are factual matters. Sanga to Chinu is in a deplorable state. From Anyinawasi all the way to Vegbe to Bame, it's in a deplorable state. Bame to Peve is in a deplorable state. So if I speak about these matters, Anum through Boso to Parliament Dugan to Tu is in a deplorable state. So don't be emotional, my brother. It's a difficult job you are doing. You want to sell your candidate. You are putting some marketing lines out. We'll have to tackle that and let you know that his performance so far doesn't warrant that.
Okay.
It's not an insult. Your boss has promised every child a chocolate. He hasn't delivered. every bank account for every Ghanaian, he hasn't delivered. Every police station will have a CCTV camera. He hasn't delivered. I said the next level is up or below.
Point made. People are rounding up on this matter because I know that this NDA thing keeps coming up every now and then. I know the extent to which the OSP went in respect to this matter because I have some documentation to that effect. But the document that you have in front of you with respect to this NDA, what is the status of the case now, as we speak? Finally, quickly. Before
it's in court. We've started testifying. Yes, I think 3 witnesses have testified so far, including myself. So I'll be careful not to go into further details so that we would not be in the area of contempt, saying that we are discussing the merits. We've stayed clear of the merits, but we're just saying that yes, its beginning shows that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was caught ball watching. It showed everything else apart from somebody who can protect the public purse. So please, for me, I'm done with him. I'm done. Cry. I won't be fooled twice. No, like Obasanjo said, that the first fool is not a fool. The second fool, right?
That was a small point.
Charlie, anyway, let's look at it. I think is that all?
Yes.
So please, to round up, but my last comment on this matter is that in this particular matter, please, the ones who are quiet, the ball is in your court now. You have to speak because even Bible says it. Let me quote this one. It says, the Revelation 3:15-16. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, that's neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. So the neutrals, look, no, please, you have to stand up. In crisis, in great times like this of moral crisis, cathedral, not protecting the public purse, wanton dissipation of public funds, you keep quiet. The Bible says no. This is not. You are reading the battle is the Lord's out of context. The same Bible is full of several quotations that get up. It's this faith not backed by actions. It's useless. So when you come and you are singing the battle is the Lord, and you are not talking about what you are doing practically, it means that you are quoting the Bible out of context. And that's one of them that I've quoted for you. God says, look, he will spit you out because you are neither hot nor cold. We don't want people on the fences. People who are on the fences are actually strengthening the hands of the oppressor. people on fences actually strengthen the hands of the oppressor. So if you're a CEO today, you are making your millions of dollars and you say, this is politics, I have nothing to do with politics. You are strengthening the hands of the oppressor. You're a retired public officer, you've made good money and you think you enjoy with your family alone. Please, you are strengthening the hands of the oppressor and so on and so forth.
Let me mention just a quick one. Just a quick one. I think we need to debunk this idea that Dr. Bawumia is leading digitalization. Because look, as far back as mid-90s, people like Victor Solomon went to jail for introducing, you know, of the court computerization system. We have been practicing e-justice. That is digitalization. E-passport. In fact, the building of the new court complex, which is no longer new, is part of the digitalization process of the e-justice system.
Dr. Kabir Mama.
E-passport.
Yes, I just need a quick one on this. Hold on.
That Bawumia is leading digitalization is a big fallacy.
I think that the better use of my 1 minute is to speak to the Ghanaian people, not to respond to the issues being raised here. The Vice President yesterday submitted his form. The Vice President made clear his vision, a gist of it. The Vice President's vision could be debated. We'll match it against their preferred candidates, their vision, their track record, their personal character, their sense of clarity in their vision. We'll match that against that. And when we do that, I'm sure the Ghanaian people are very clear in their mind that the Vice President, the number that came out is a testimony to the good work the Vice President is doing for the MPP, the belief in the Vice President, that he is someone who has sacrificed for the party, someone who is honest to the people of Ghana, someone who has worked so hard to ensure that he improves on the loss of the Ghanaian people, someone who is humble. These are the sterling qualities of the Vice President. Aside his experience, 21 years of working for the MPP, 16 of those years very active in the MPP. That by far, he's the most experienced among all those contestants. And this is what is going to put Bawumia ahead of anyone in the MPP, and that's going to make him become the president, inshallah, in December 2024.
We'll see. The coming days definitely has a lot to offer. But before we round it up on this, the High Court yesterday, the Honorable Roxanne Dafiamekpor, because you're a lawyer and quite interested in how things are playing out with James Equation, the High Court ruled that the perjury and forgery trial of James Equation will be held on a day-to-day basis starting June 20, 2023. In fact, this decision followed the court's rejection of a request made by Equation's lawyer, Justin Teriwaja, to postpone the trial until the Asen North by-election is over, after June 27. Presided by Justice Mary Mame Ekwe Yanzu, the court determined to proceed with the trial without delay. This was because the Attorney General, Godfrey Yabo Adame, you understand, who was in court himself, opposed this argument by the lawyer for Equation, emphasizing that Equation had not been assigned any national duty for that matter. So, because of the seriousness, according to the Attorney General, the seriousness of the charges against Equation, a conviction could result in imprisonment, hence the importance of going ahead of this. So June 20th, June 21st, 23rd, supposed to be in court. Lawyer, quick one on this, and then...
all these matters are predicated on Article 90 of the Constitution. Presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And of course, under 19.3A, I think, every accused person, the trial of a criminal matter ought to take place in the presence of the accused person. So it's a bit difficult for an accused not to be in court for trial to start. And so I will not fault the court for fixing dates. But the problem that the NDC has is the manner of the fixing of the dates, the circumstances surrounding the case. This case was filed over 2 years ago. Over 2 years ago. I am told that it was filed over 2 years ago. Suddenly, in April, May, June, the Republic sees it fit to start trial. That's fine. But you don't stampede the parties, the accused person especially, into hearing.
If you say stampede, what do you mean?
Stampede means
Really?
you are asking the person to come to court every day, continuously. That's a stampede. He has a reasonable excuse to say that, okay, I can be in court on Monday or Tuesday, but thereafter give me another week to be able to go sort out some personal issues and come back to court. In any case, he's on bail. So he's available to defend himself in the matter. He's not absconding from the jurisdiction. He's not a fugitive of justice. The lawyer has indeed... You see, court hearings are the convenience of parties and the court. That is why when a lawyer proposes a date for a matter to be heard, the court can say that, no, per my calendar, I cannot accommodate you. So another date will be taken. The lawyer on the other side will say, no, that's okay, but it inconveniences me because I'm before another court. So when a lawyer makes a prayer and the judge flatly refuses and unreasonably sets hearing days for 3-4 days, it's a problem. A single day would have been sufficient. Then you see how, like lawyers will say, then we'll see how it goes. In any case, a decision to fix a hearing date is also a decision of the court. And I think it can be looked at.
Okay. We'll see how the coming days will look like because it's the election is on 27th
the men's gold case, Attorney General.
Okay, thank you.
For the past 4 years, he has refused to list that the men's gold matter for hearing. It's been adjusted to 5 times.
It's just one that came through.
It's not right.
Yeah, good. Just this comment. Yes. Lawyer, Awaji Debra said this comment. I laughed at this very comment.
Okay. I'm not aware.
Yes, so I mean, or maybe it's from elsewhere, but it struck me when they said that Jachikwesi will be heard daily. And Namwan's case has been adjourned for the 35th time. It just summed everything up. I don't think we need to say anything more. I mean, because Namwan, whose case has affected millions of our citizens, has caused people so much pain, disease, death, etc. That one is not urgent. Is this one that, boy, let me keep quiet.
Yeah, I just want first and foremost to correct the misrepresentation that the case was filed 2 years ago. The case was filed actually on the 12th of February 2022. That is not 2 years.
No, I was told that was filed 2 years ago.
I'm giving the specific date, so I'm telling you that it is not 2 years ago. That is one. I mean, he was charged with 5 counts. Again, that is within the court to decide. He is a lawyer. He knows that that is the discretionary power of the court system to decide on days of management. So for me, I will leave it at that to say that the judiciary be a different arm of government and being entrusted with the mandate of dispensing justice. If they decide on that and they feel it's fitted to do that in the interest of, delivering justice, why not? So I think that we can have disagreement with how, and it's genuine when we disagree with the courts on how they go about dispensing their justice, which is within our right. But let us also be mindful that the courts are there to serve the people of Ghana. And when they are doing it, we can discuss it from that particular perspective.
Okay.
Thank you. May I respond quickly? Exercise of discretion ought not to be arbitrary.
Of course, we know that within our administrative justice law has it
ought not to be arbitrary. Just for the record.
I know that.
Dr. Tia Abdul Kabiru Mahama is Technical Advisor, Office of the President. Also, thank you to you, Roxy Nelson Dafiamko, MP for South Dai, and to you, Lawyer Martin Pebo. Appreciate your time. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning on Key Point. Stay with me. We're live on 3FM 92.7. An exclusive interview with lawyer Chachu Chikata comes up right after this quick break. This is Key Point. We have a number of things to talk about with lawyer Chachu Chikata. Promises to be interesting. Stay with me. We'll be back shortly.
Blah, blah, blah. G-Block! Togo! G-Block, my mental front, why? Oh, what can you hear me say? Wait a minute, someone may fort kakra. Mon fan cheme. G-Block, okay, I'm sorry. Tiboni am fan to matter. Me pa me ba why? Anya me ya munya mutre.
No check you no.
Ma to bi wa ya no ho anopa filling station na top wall.
Ade na di.
Ade na di.
Ayo na yo fisa no. Tiaso. Now we na say manage di an kokra. Me di ani kwa nim kwa so say me car no run smooth. Wait, and am di go me car. Speed made synthetic engine oil. Speedmate fully synthetic engine oil. Sagum, Ebana engine oil, papa dia. And one is Speedmate synthetic engine oil. A 100% virgin oil. A cow high performance. We need we see any problem here. Dunia afa. Enjoy.
Every father deserves to be celebrated. Let Melcom help you brighten Dad's big day. Enjoy a whopping 20% discount on your purchases from this Friday 16th to Sunday 18th. Put a smile on your daddy's face. Make this Father's Day even more special with Melcom. Terms and conditions apply. Melcom, where Ghana shops.
Ura musana eshi ano eshi metwe anopa awia imle even kwa machekwa na tim solitwe.
The glue that sticks things together is now tearing lives apart.
No more shame na agu itine kutaro ti omwa mo se wa hili say
a big trouble in a small tube.
You ya metwe na mo be 12 years until no na matwe as in 19 years.
It's a story of how young men are wasting their lives away, addicted to sniffing glue.
The government is not paying attention anywhere because I don't see anywhere in Ghana that the youth are finding jobs to do. So it's a general bad governance issue.
For them, it is a cheaper alternative to hard drugs. Experts are worried about its life-threatening consequences.
I decided to track them down to this particular place.
Godwin Asediba, in High on Glue, visits some communities and reveals the canker robbing the lives of many Ghanaian youth. High on Glue airs on Wednesday, June 21 on TV3 at 9 p.m. and across our social media platforms. Welcome back. This is Key Point here on TV3. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on DSTV channel 279. This past few weeks, we've had reactions on exactly what the state of Ghana's energy debt is and what contributed to the increasing energy debt, which we are all carrying and is weighing us down. The back and forth and the political interpretation or understanding of this energy debt situation has left some facts in doubt. I want to go to the right person who has been there right from the beginning to understand exactly what the state of affairs is with this energy debt that we're talking about. On the back of the statement by the World Bank Country Director Pierre Laporte about what led to Ghana's energy debt increasing. Also, the Aker Energy is also another issue that we will talk about. Plus, the GMPC's recent issues with the board chair, the CEO, and the Minister of Energy. I sat with lawyer Chachuti Kata, former GMPC CEO. We talked about these matters. Take a look. Chikata is our guest. Thank you so much, sir, for agreeing to sit with us.
It's always a pleasure to be with you and to try to have a conversation around what I think are important issues.
Absolutely. It's been a while. It's almost 2 years, isn't it, that we sat?
Time flies, you see. Time flies. But in that time, unfortunately, we've had major issues around our economy and around the whole situation of the nation and pensioners and bondholders. So it's been a busy time.
Did you invest in any government bonds?
No, I didn't.
Well, I'm sure sitting down and watching your fellow age mates and pensioners, that certainly was concerning for you.
Of course it was, and it's something that is an ongoing problem, but it's a problem that relates to the future of our economy and its growth and its recovery from the current situation, because it is that growth of the economy that is going to generate the resources And it takes my mind back actually to, what happened in the 80s when, again, Ghana was in a deep economic situation, a deeply troubling economic situation. And it was in that time, the economic recovery program and so on, it was in that time actually that the whole thinking about the National Petroleum Corporation, oil and gas becoming an important part of the nation's recovery, the whole thinking began around that time. And one would hope that, again, with the right thinking and the right approaches, oil and gas can make a contribution to the future and to the sustained recovery of our economy.
And it's important that you make reference to even that period, because right from the 83 down to 88, when you stepped into the GMPC, to the period that you were there for about 12 years or so as a chief executive officer. Tell us what exactly you did during that period to, as it were, develop Ghana's capacity of commercial production of crude oil.
Well, actually, just one little point I should make about some of your earlier comments. The first commercial oil production in Ghana was from the Salt Pond field in the late 70s. It wasn't 2007 that was the first commercial production, but it was a relatively small amount, just to set that record straight.
It's important.
But in the 80s, building on what had begun to be done, we sort of had to look again at the whole framework for the oil and gas sector. At that time, it was really part of the general mineral sector. And so the laws were part of the general minerals laws.
Right.
And there was the PNDC Secretary for Fuel and Power, as it was called then, the Ministry of Fuel and Power, Mr. Appiah Korang. He actually initiated a lot of steps to make sure that there was a review of that mineral legal framework in the light of the current reality of the oil and gas sector. Because, by then a lot had happened in relation to oil. OPEC had begun to be, a very powerful player. National oil companies had begun to be formed. And he sought assistance from the United Nations Center for Transnational Corporations. At that time, Nana Dr. Asante, was a director in the legal department of the UN Center for Transnational Corporations. And under his watch, they assigned a consultancy firm, I think it was called Tanza and Associates, a consultancy firm from New York, which was very knowledgeable about the oil and gas business, to start that process of reviewing the legal framework that existed and beginning to put in place a new legal framework. And it was in the course of that he also decided to set up a local team that would be the counterparts of Tanza and Associates, so that we would work with them, especially some of the lawyers here who could look at the laws and look at whatever review proposals they had in the light of the framework that we already had. So that's where I came in. And, I was also then involved in a committee that I chaired, which was the committee that began to negotiate new agreements with interested investors. Because again, the ministry by then embarked on a promotion of the oil and gas, potential of Ghana to international investors. And the ministry was able to get new data, new seismic data on the offshore, on the basis of which it began to invite, new investment. So, I think, Mr. Appiah Korang and the team at the ministry at that time, did a lot of groundwork on the basis of which, these committees really put together a framework that really involved 3 laws at that time. It was the Petroleum Exploration and Production Law, the GNPC law, and then the Petroleum Income Tax Law. So this was the sort of the trio of laws that now separated the oil and gas sector from the general mineral regime, because the mineral regime covered hard rock minerals, gold, manganese, bauxite, and so on. But for the first time, we had a separate set of laws that addressed the oil and gas sector. And I think it's significant that in that period, a decision was taken to create a national oil company, because it was evident from what was happening around the globe that national oil companies were going to have an important role. I mean, as I said, that was when, OPEC was coming to its own. Companies like Saudi Aramco and so on were becoming known as a force to reckon with, and their contributions to the economies of their countries were clearly recognized. So it was in that frame of thinking that I believe, the government at the time, the PNDC, and particularly the sector PNDC secretary, began to situate GNPC, a national corporation which would now drive the agenda of trying to find oil, trying to produce it, and make it a vehicle for developing the economy of Ghana. That I think was broadly the agenda that we sought to pursue. And in that context, you have to remember also that Ghana had a situation where soon after December 31st, 1981, Nigeria decided to withhold supplies of oil and so on. And in that sort of period, it was felt that there was some urgency about us finding our own oil and producing it and not being at the mercy of Nigeria or any other supplier. So that was the setting. But I think one final thing that I should highlight is that this was also in a period when the dependence of Ghana on hydro resources was becoming problematic, years of drought and so on. So we began to look at gas and the importance of gas. And I make this point because right from even the first law that was established in terms of GNPC's role, gas was stated as a priority for GNPC to address.
I see. And so, because after the commercial discovery and production after 2010, then there was a lot of conversation about the gas aspect of it, which led to the setting up of the Ghana National Gas Company, because we had substantial ownership of the gas component. But I want to find out, between 1988, when you got into the thick of things at the GNPC, till you got out, what were the specific, apart from the laws that you mentioned, the specific building blocks that led to the commercial production in 2007?
That's a very important question, and the key thing that we did was to establish the capacity of a national company to interact with the international industry. That meant having people who were skilled in geosciences, geology, geophysics, engineering, drilling engineering and reservoir engineering and so on. And the good news for Ghana at that time was that having a far-sighted first president like President Nkrumah, a number of Ghanaians had been trained in various countries, including people trained in Romania, Bulgaria, as well as in the West, in Imperial College, London, and so on. So there were people who already were trained in the industry. Some of them happened to be working in the international industry. So one of the first things that we tried to do was to build a core of people that had the requisite capabilities to interact with the international industry. Because if you're promoting your potential I mean, you can't do it just by relying on foreign experts.
So the human resource.
The human resource is key. You've got to make sure that there are people who can address the international industry in terms of what the international industry expects to hear. In technical terms, it's not a political investment promotion event. It's largely a technically driven activity. And as I said, we fortunately had a number of well-trained Ghanaians already. Some of them had been working, for instance, in the Geological Survey. Some had been working in the old Petroleum Department when, they began to sort of do some of the exploration related to Salt Pond particularly. There had been some young, engineers and geologists who were already working in the Petroleum Department. So when that Petroleum Department got converted to become the nucleus of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, some of them were there. And then we got in additional, human resources, Ghanaians from out there. I remember very well one of the people who subsequently became an exploration manager in GNPC, Mr. Piache. He had worked for Phillips Petroleum for a long time. And Phillips Petroleum was one of the companies who were active in Ghana. They made some discoveries, North and South Tunnel, and so on. So somebody like him being able to come and join the team, we already had people like Nana Safuaje and Joe Clemesu and people, I remember some of the names, but I'm forgetting some others. They should forgive me. But Ajay Akpo and people who had been geologists from the Geological Survey, and so they formed the nucleus. And I really am very proud of the sort of capacity that we were able to bring together of Ghanaians, because it was always a joy having such capacity when we interacted with the most, powerful international oil companies in the world, because they matched their counterparts in their knowledge. In fact, I would say that one of the things that became obvious was that the team in GNPC was more knowledgeable consistently than any of the companies that we interacted with when it came to our own our own potential with the data regarding our own country. The team in GNPC was certainly a team that excelled beyond any shadow of doubt, and it made it very easy because you see, in the petroleum agreements we also had provisions when we were partnering with international companies, whereby some of our people would go and work with them in their offices on secondment and so on. And, they soon realized that these were people who were coming not as sort of interns or, as new graduates, but they were coming really to share knowledge, from what they had gathered in relation to Ghana's prospects. And that was always a very positive element, which, so it meant that in the period from the establishment of GNPC, and the active operations, we started actively operating from about February, March 85, I remember. And from that period, when we started signing agreements with companies like Amoco, like Shell, Unocal, and Arco, we started signing agreements with a number of significant international companies, and those agreements led to a new phase of exploration, especially in the offshore western part of Ghana, and that really laid the foundation for the major mahogany discovery in 2007. Because in fact, the company that had done a lot of work in that area, which Cosmos sort of inherited, that was a company called Hunt Oil, and basically with GNPC, Hunt Oil had identified a lot of prospects in that area. And I remember, people like Thomas Mainu, the geophysicist in GMPC at that time, were the ones who presented some of this material to the Cosmos team that was, being newly established after they'd, been part of a previous company. And, I think people have to appreciate that, oil exploration is not just some kind of, wave a magic wand one day, and then the oil is found. It is a very systematic build-up. And one of the important things, too, about GMPC's existence was that because we had a national company, a national corporation that was always a partner to whichever foreign entity is working here, the people in GMPC had a more global view of the geology, the geophysics and so on. They had, more access to the data than any of these individual companies working in the individual blocks. So when somebody like Thomas Mainu or, Nana Safaje, who was his boss at that time, and some of the other geophysicists, Ferdinand Aniwa, may he rest in peace, really solid, geoscientists, when they would speak about Ghana's potential, they spoke authoritatively. And, being in a position, as Thomas was in those days, to put forward to the Cosmos team, this already well-established set of prospects that had been mapped and so on with Hunt Oil, I mean, it made it a compelling proposition. So it wasn't difficult for them to buy into that. And of course, I like to tell those geoscientists that I'm sure if they had the money themselves, they would have put the money where their mouth is.
Because it was just obvious based on the data that there was enough reason to make that exploration.
Exactly.
It's a very interesting point to make about the human resource potential, because after commercial production, the conversation has been how many Ghanaians are actually playing key roles in the expertise, the technical aspect of things. And especially because now, as we speak, there's this whole local content which is meant to, as it were, transfer knowledge from these experts to Ghanaians, because if you look at the chain, a lot of Ghanaians who are employed within this oil sector are below, the ladder. And so there was that arrangement to get a lot more Ghanaians get the expertise. But with what you're saying, there are people who were there. So where's the disconnect? What happened to the extent that after your period into 2007, we did not see that continuous increase in the Ghanaians being trained to get the level of expertise to take up the mantle of leadership? I
mean, first of all, you've got to remember that in 2001, there were people who thought that GMPC should be more or less cut to size. And in that period, 2001, 2007, quite a number of GMPC personnel, including technical people, were either, sagged or, they themselves left because they didn't see much of a future for them within the organization. It was made as if GMPC had tried to be too ambitious or something, and so, for some people,
being too ambitious?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. In fact, I think it was that, kind of drive of GMPC in that period that enabled some of these people to distinguish themselves. Some of the talent that I referred to, which was, there, was able to distinguish itself, to come to the surface and to be acknowledged within the industry. And as I said, that's something we can all feel very good about. So it wasn't just something about me as chief executive, but it was really that capacity that was spread through, all the sort of technical divisions of the corporation. Now, I think it's also important to highlight the fact that GMPC capacity by itself is not sufficient local content, because in fact, one of the things that was stated as a key object of GMPC from the beginning, and in the law that was set up, one of the key objects was obtaining the effective transfer to Ghana of appropriate technology relating to petroleum operations, ensuring the training of citizens of Ghana, the development of national capabilities in all aspects. Now, this again is something that has to happen over time as a number of different operations are conducted and you have your people engaged with the different operations. You know, Amoco is there, you have people from GMPC working with them, Shell is doing something, you have people from GMPC, you know, so that is what really enables that sort of technological transfer to occur. Because, you know, Ghana simply was not at a place where there was already a locally established framework for making sure that, you know, we would get things up and running with, you know, discoveries and so on. So over time, you needed to build all this capacity. And I think that, you know, that happened. Now, you made reference to local content. You've got to go beyond just having one national corporation to a situation where in the supply of goods and services for this very capital-intensive operation, you make sure also that Ghanaians are more engaged. So, you know, if an oil company is coming to be involved in exploration, they're going to bring in a lot of equipment. You know, they're going to be hiring people, for instance, on drilling rigs. Quite often, oil companies come in assuming that there's not enough local capacity, so they bring in foreigners at all levels. But if you are able to demonstrate to them that they're capable Ghanaians who can take up some of these positions, then it becomes, you know, more and more local content evolving, and people begin to appreciate that Ghana does have a pool of, you know, human capacity that makes it unnecessary, you know, to bring on board entirely, you know, foreigners. That again ensures that by the time you're generating revenue from the production, you're not having so much that's going into cost recovery, you know, which is just going out, but you're having some of that cost recovery actually related to Ghanaian goods and services. So it's important to have that continuous process of developing local capacity. But again, that leads to another complication because, you know, we train a lot of Ghanaians over the last couple of decades, but in recent years, the industry has gone into some degree of stagnation in Ghana. There's not much new activity. So, for instance, in Takoradi, you have a lot of, you know, I mean, industries and so on that, I mean, companies that developed activities around oil and gas, and currently they have nothing to do.
That's true, in the West Cape 3-point area.
So basically, you have to make sure that that local content is matched by increasing investment, you know, from the international industry, because we know that as a country, we really do not have the resources by ourselves to make the investments that are needed for ongoing exploration, ongoing increase in production, and so on. And that's why, you know, we also, as we're trying to develop the local content, we also have to make sure that the investment levels are ongoing, they're continuing, and that we are having, you know, the sort of opportunities that Ghanaians need to, you know, provide their services to different investors and get benefits. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of local content, but it also depends on getting more investment activity into the oil and gas sector.
So, and a quick one on this, because I want us to move into the impact that this oil discovery has made over the period. I mean, if I talk about a bigger commercial discovery from 2007, taking into consideration the 80s, what was also discovered. It's been 16 years, at least if we're counting from 2007 to date. Does the current legal framework safeguard the evolution that this oil sector, our oil sector, has gone through over the period since we started commercial production?
I think it largely does, frankly, and I think we should be a little bit careful about imagining that, you know, making changes in laws.
God has been called for a review of the framework to address current challenges that.
Yeah, but what are the current challenges that people are talking about? I think the reality is that the legal framework is adequate to meet the current challenges. There may be some respects, you know, and I'll give an example in a minute. There may be some respects in which consideration can be given to some amendments and so on. But in terms, broadly speaking, the existing legal framework, I think, does the job and has been effective over the last, you know, few decades in attracting the investment that was needed. I think that we do have to look at our own sort of working of the legal framework. When I say our own working of the legal framework, here's what I mean. For example, you have within the legal framework, the law and the agreement framework, you have clear provisions that when the company that has come in, the foreign company that has come in with its investment, when it's made, you know, I mean, when it's recovered its costs in relation to some of the equipment, for instance, that it has brought in, you know, an FPSO, the subsea infrastructure and so on, GNPC effectively should become the owner of that infrastructure, because GNPC's perspective may go beyond just that one field that company is focused on. GNPC may be looking at ways of bringing in other fields into that same infrastructure. So the legal framework provided for GNPC becoming the owner, but that requires GNPC to do a proper accounting of all this cost recovery as is going on from the beginning. So from 2010, when you know, Jubilee Oil Production, for instance, began, it will be important to try to find out, for instance, whether GNPC is clear about how much cost recovery has successfully taken place, and therefore which assets can become theirs 100%. Because when those assets become theirs, they are able then to tie in additional production from nearby. You know, here we are in a situation, for instance, where we've talked about the Aker situation. Aker, you know, they came into a block where 7 discoveries had already been made by Hess, and Hess decided to exit Ghana. Now, that immediately provided an opportunity for GNPC itself to see whether even some of its existing infrastructure could be tied with any of these new discoveries, you know, just as an example. So GNPC, you know, has got to be proactive in identifying value opportunities from the work that has been going on with, you know, these foreign investors and so on, and making sure that it generates more and more national value, and not always kind of passively expect that, you know, the foreign companies are, you know, going to do it all for the country, because frankly they are not going to do it all.
Indeed. It's good that you make mention of the Aker Energy, because that's another area that I want us to get into quite close, because recently the minority in Parliament have actually called for an investigation into that $1.65 billion deal, because eventually one of the companies has actually decided to pull out. In fact,
it's not only the minority in parliament that has raised issues about this transaction. From the onset, when it was announced, a lot of civil society organizations,
indeed, about 29 of them, last time I read, raised fundamental questions about.
And those questions are indeed quite straightforward, and frankly, I think it is good for this country that in the end, that transaction did not go forward. Because it's very simple. I mean, how does GMPC, which has been a partner to Aker, in a situation where Aker has made commitments to undertake the appraisal and development of the fields that are in that block, how does GMPC suddenly say, or the government suddenly say, I'm going to borrow 1.6 billion in order to buy a stake which we gave to Aker in the first place? I mean, frankly, it didn't make any sense whatsoever, because, if Aker didn't do what it committed itself to do, the block would come back to GMPC, and GMPC can either find a partner or, find the right, technology providers to help it, to undertake the development itself. So it really didn't make any sense and the government, at that time, you remember a few years ago, the government already, had its own debt problems. They were going to incur debt, 1.6 billion, to give to GMPC, to give to a Norwegian billionaire and his company. I mean, that really, I was amazed by that, because any way you look at it, it was not a transaction that was going to be beneficial for Ghana. And it is significant, as you've said, that subsequent events have just exposed the reality that that transaction was not a good transaction for Ghana. And I think going forward, one of the things that I'm very interested in looking at is, what is GMPC's take on those discoveries that have been made, those 7 discoveries, Pecan, Paradise, Beach, and some others. What is his own plan to address those discoveries? Because it seems to me that existing discoveries and being able to monetize those discoveries has to be a priority for GMPC. So if we look at the expenditure priorities for GMPC in a year, for instance, and we find that $45 million was spent in 2020 in so-called sustainability, activities, social responsibility things, and so on. And yet, what was put in, for instance, in that year to the Sankofa Gyinyame production was a fraction, like less than $8 million, according to the records that we can all look at. I mean, it tells you that there's a bit of a mismatch, because sustainability depends on getting increasing production and increasing revenue. But if you spend so much more on sustainability at the expense of your actual production, then clearly there's a problem. In fact, if you look at some of the reports of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, in that period, 2020-2021, they are highlighting the fact that in respect of Sankofa Gyinyame as well as Jubilee and 10, there's some problems with what they call gas handling, and it requires investment to ensure that the gas from those fields is actually exported so that it doesn't compromise oil production in the future. There are very serious issues raised in that period. So in my mind, the priorities, the capital expenditure priorities that are associated with getting increasing oil production must be, the top part of the agenda, must be, really they cannot be sacrificed for anything else. But you have a situation where, you know, you're spending so much more on sustainability than, and you know that was also an election year. So
absolutely. And in fact, a lot of questions were raised about the kind of activities that the CSR money was, GMPC CSR money was going into. But if I recall, if I have a copy of the said memo on this Aker Energy deal, which definitely did not go through. The $1.3 billion was for acquiring Aker's interest, and $350 million was for development cost of Pecan Phase 1.
That's the share of GMPC in the development cost, correct?
And the justification of the Minister of Energy was that it's quoted that more experience is needed for the exploration of GMPC's agenda, and in fact, to the extent that Exploco had to be involved in the energy transition process, so it was key that this deal had to go through.
No,
that
I'm
was
sorry,
the justification.
absolutely not. I mean, I don't think that those justifications hold any water whatsoever. Apart from anything else, frankly, Aker, you know, as Aker, a separate company, did not have the kind of technical capability that it could effectively transfer to GMPC.
They didn't have the
technical. They did not
ability.
have it because Aker, in the context of what they're doing in the North Sea, they work with BP. They have a joint venture with BP, and the operator is BP, not Aker. So this Ghana operation was the first context in which Aker was going to be an operator. And frankly, I cannot see why GMPC could not, you know, have that capacity. And frankly, you know, this distinction, Exploco, GMPC, I don't think it's so important. We should look at them all as GMPC. GMPC and the capacity that they had and the ability that they had, either with any new partner or by themselves, you know, bringing in whatever technical services they needed, would have been able to spend this 1.3 billion in a more effective way, in my opinion. Rather than hand it over and then 300 million is supposed to be used for the development. If Aker did not want to make the investment, then it would have to relinquish the interest, and then it would be 100% GMPC. So why would GMPC have to pay Aker for something that they had given Aker in the first place? You know, GMPC gave up significant stake in that block in order to serve as an incentive for Aker to bring in the money to do the appraisal and development of the Pecan field.
So if GMPC wanted to take, or the government of Ghana wanted to take 37% of the stake, which we're going to pay the $1.3 billion for, it should have ordinarily just come back to us.
Absolutely.
Without any cost.
Without any cost, because if they are not prepared to make the investment in terms of what commitments they made at the beginning. The commitments were that we are buying this interest from Hess, and they bought it at a pretty low price from Hess. It was not all the investments that Hess had made that they paid for. I think they paid $25 million, you know, to get into that block, and then there was a kind of contingent payment that was going to be about 75 million if a plan of development was approved, you know, which then they would have to pay to Hess. So basically 25 million. And based on that, we are now, a few years later, buying 37% for 1.3 billion. I mean, what sort of justification can you find for that situation? You know, frankly, I think it's very hard to justify that sort of scenario. And as I'm insisting, you know, the legal framework, the agreements provide that if the companies which have made commitments to risk their capital to develop the resources, if they no longer wish to do that, you know, then they walk away, like Hess. Hess didn't want to put any more money into Ghana. They had made some big discoveries in Guyana, which they were more interested in pursuing single-mindedly. So they sort of sold it almost for nothing to Aker. And now we are hearing that Aker itself is selling for $1 to the AFC, the Africa Finance Corporation. Now, I mean, frankly, again, the legal framework allows GNPC to preempt that transaction because GNPC can say, well, if you're selling it for $1, I'm willing to pay that $1, and on that basis, it should come to me. And so I think that there is enough in the legal framework for GNPC to be able to have a proactive role in ensuring that there is national value being realized, rather than all the time the value going outside. I think that transaction would have been a disaster because that $1 billion, I mean, it would take a long, long time for even that cost to be recovered, much less any revenue being generated, any return on that investment being generated from the Pecan field. I mean, I don't think that anybody can, convince me that there was justification in terms of energy transition. In fact, the thing about the energy transition is that it makes it more important for our national company to protect the national interest in a way that may be different from what the international companies and the international financial institutions are doing. Clearly, Aker was having difficulty in raising the money to advance its objective because these days, in the midst of energy transition and so on, financial institutions are hesitant. I mean, when you have big companies like the ExxonMobils, the Shells and Chevrons and so on, based on their balance sheet, they are able to raise money and get on with their activity. But a company like Aker is looking to raise money, from financial institutions, and because of the energy transition situation, they're not able to, raise that money. So it seems to me that it is a question of a national company, stepping in and finding ways of raising that sort of capital to develop, as opposed to buying back a stake that they already gave in the first instance.
So really, GNPC did not need Aker to become an operator?
Really? No, not really, because, I mean, and in any case, we've seen since then that, Aker itself has decided to wash their hands for $1. This is something that they had earlier expressed a strong interest in developing, and on that basis, they asked for incentives to be given to them. Those incentives included sacrificing what had been part of Exploco's interest and giving it to them. A lot of concessions were made to them to make it possible for them to undertake the appraisal and development that they committed themselves to. But in the end, it has come to nothing. I mean, if we are told that some management from Aker is going to be there working with Africa Finance Corporation, I mean, GNPC is able also to find the right, team, technically the right expertise to work with it in order to undertake the development. So, I mean, having a management in place from Aker in a situation where Aker now has no risk capital involved whatsoever, I frankly think that is really an unfortunate situation.
Some say actually that some of these deals get onto the table, and in fact they get approved because of the politicization of the entire GNPC itself. And so it's one of the reasons why there has to be a review, so that the CEO who is there has the right knowledge, expertise, understands exactly the vision he or she is driving, plus the board members as well know exactly what they want to achieve with every decision they take. That's one of the reasons why they want.
Yeah, but that doesn't require changing laws. When I was running GNPC, I had a board which had, you know, people like Dr. J.L.S. Abbey, may his soul rest in peace, people like Mr. Parker, you know, people like the former Director of Geological Survey, Mr. Banson, you know, I mean, the people who are appointed to the board, I mean, they should be the right people who can make a contribution. That doesn't require change of the law in order for the right choices to be made. You know, in any context, choices of personnel have to be made to institutions. And I don't think it's the change in the law that, you know, makes it possible to make the right choices. You know, I think that it is always possible to make the right choices. And, you know, when we see an organization like GNPC, which has so much potential, it should be of concern to us to ensure, and it's good that, you know, civil society organizations and so on are raising issues about, you know, some of the people in certain positions and so on, but it doesn't require change in the law in order to get those things addressed.
In fact, so that actually ties into something that happened recently. As we're talking about the personnel and the people in decision-making positions in a critical institution like GNPC, recently the board chair of the GNPC, Freddie Blay, who is former chairman of the ruling NPP, together with the CEO, incurred the wrath of the energy minister because of the alleged steps which were initiated to sell the Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited's 50% interest in the South Deepwater Tunnel block. And the fact that the minister says that he had actually given a directive that should not be done. That transaction shouldn't take place between GNPC and the South African institution. But later found out that there has been an initial step taken by the board chair at his blind side as well. This is something I know you follow quite critically as well.
Well, I followed it not in, you know, too much detail, but there are certain intriguing aspects of that whole disputation between the minister and the board chair. I mean, starting with the board chair's position, the explanations that I have read have to do with PetroSA exercising a right of preemption in respect of the Anadarko divestiture. Now, I mean, frankly, that is a very, you know, weak kind of justification because, well, weak is actually a generous word because, I mean, the time of preemption has long passed. You know, when Anadarko was about to exit, at that time, within the group, that is Anadarko's, you know, foreign partners, at that time, what the agreement requires them to do is to indicate to the participants, their partners, their co-investors, that we want to exit and, you know, this is maybe something has been offered to us by Total Energy or something. But if you can match it, then you can have the interest that we have. Right. Now, so at that time, if PetroSA wanted to exercise a right of preemption, they were entirely at liberty to do that. But you don't wait until a situation now where GNPC has made the acquisition, and then you say that in the name of preemption, you are selling 50%. I mean, that, again, there's no, you know, framework of preemption in this. Basically, it's an attempt to sell a 50% stake. And I think that if that's what it is, I mean, they should try to justify it in terms of the value for Ghana, of what they are trying to sell and so on. Not this argument about preemption, because frankly, the legal structure about preemption cannot be applied to that situation, because the preemption situation has passed. It was a time when Anadarko was selling. And GNPC, again, under the legal framework, has its own ability to preempt. That's also independent of what the partners among themselves can do. So GNPC, under the Petroleum Exploration and Production Law, the Act, is able to preempt. And they exercise that preemption. And it's interesting that Tullow Oil also exercised a preemption right. So part of, and they were approved to do the preemption at that time. So part of what, GNPC would have got, in the end, it was ceded to Tullow at that time. So if PetroSA at that time also wanted to be part of the preempt, then they would have put forward themselves, and within that context, the preemption could have been addressed, comprehensively. Yeah, but that was in the past. So after all that is done, GNPC has a stake, and then now later you say that you're going to sell 50% of it. That's a different transaction. Essentially, it's a transaction in which you now want to sell part of the stake of GNPC, and you need to justify it as such. You don't justify it in terms of preemption and so on of PetroSA, because there's
that period had elapsed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, but you see, there's also something interesting in relation to what I read about the concerns of the minister in respect of the JOHL, Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited entity, which is registered in the Cayman Islands. And, I noted that there is a reference to some payments that are going to be made to Litasco in connection with which some commitments seem to have been made.
Between the two institutions, yes.
Exactly. So there is an attempt to protect, as it were, the payments to Litasco from, being affected by another transaction that, GNPC undertakes. Now, I think we need to know a bit more about this transaction with Litasco, because, as far as I can understand it, if the transaction is by way of like a loan to GNPC, there are issues about how consistent it is with the current legal framework in which there is a provision of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, which requires all the receipts, all revenues received from oil sales and so on, to go into the Petroleum Holding Fund. Now, you can't just use an entity which is created by GNPC, but because it is put in the Cayman Islands, you can't just use that device in order to avoid doing what the law requires in terms of, payment into the Petroleum Holding Fund, out of which then various disbursements are made. That's the legal structure that we have. To be honest, I have some concerns that legal structure may sometimes be an unnecessary constraint on GNPC, but that is what we have at the moment. And I'll come back to explain what I mean by the constraints on GNPC. I'll come back to that in a moment. But the important point is that we have a clear legal framework requiring that these sales of oil and the revenues derived therefrom should go into the Petroleum Fund. Now, if GNPC has essentially a subsidiary, because JOHL is nothing other than a subsidiary of GNPC. It was established by GNPC in order to, exercise rights in connection with the asset. Now, if GNPC finds that, it wants to raise money and there is a problem because of that provision in the law, that's the issue that again must be faced. You don't more or less go in contradiction with the law and then you're raising money. I think Litasco is supposed to be the entity that is providing the funding But again, you know, is that a transparent process? Were there invitations to others to raise equivalent, you know, funding? Because I know that there are many financial institutions, I mean, in Japan, in Germany, you know, in Korea and so on. There are many institutions of some of these countries which are dependent on oil imports, where they are able to provide very soft long-term capital, you know, by way of a prepayment. So, I mean, Litasco, you know, is a private company whose terms may need to be compared with what can be obtained from elsewhere, you know, in order to see whether that's a valid kind of, you know, value proposition for the country. So, you know, really, when you look at the representations, both from the chairman of GNPC and from the ministry, you know, there are a lot of issues about which I think more explanation needs to be provided and more justification for particular transactions, because otherwise it then becomes almost as if various powerful players each have a particular transaction that they want to undertake. And, you know, they are sort of at loggerheads in terms of the transaction that they want to take. One of the striking things also for me, especially in relation to GNPC, is that, I mean, the GNPC chairman is supposed to be a non-executive chairman. Yes. So, you know, in this transaction, the descriptions don't suggest that he is playing a non-executive role. And that itself is a problem, you know. And, you know, I mean, it is possible to have an executive chairman, but at the moment, the framework...
And the framework says it's non-executive chair.
Exactly.
So cannot take part in, for instance, such decisions as to...
Well,
does he have the power to do what he...
He can be part of the board consideration and approval of what the management brings up. But in terms of the descriptions that I'm reading, where he seems to be taking the lead and, you know, corresponding with Petro SA and so on, that is certainly not consistent with my understanding of the current legal framework that we have for GNPC. And so there are just many issues. But as I say, at the end of the day, if GNPC, you know, was looking at a transaction of selling, you know, 50% of the asset, they have to justify it in terms of the value that they're getting for the country, not resort to this, you know, fictitious sort of preemption, you know, explanation. And by the same token, if the ministry also has a transaction that it is looking to protect with Litasco, we need to understand that transaction clearly in terms of the terms on which that prepayment arrangement, you know, yes, the terms under which that arrangement has been done, and whether there are comparable options, you know, which could have given better value.
That's right.
So the nature of the transaction, and, you know, I mean, part of the concern that I have in this reference to Litasco is also because I recall a report of PIAC, I think around 2020, 2019, in which they again make reference to the fact that GNPC was actually compelled to make some payments for fuel supplied to Car Power ship by Litasco. Now, again, it was indicated that that was on the instructions of either the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Energy. And I think that is what raises one of the complications about GNPC, which have come up in various PIAC reports, that if you have GNPC essentially being seen as just an arm of government, and, you know, directives are given which are not necessarily consistent with the corporate decision-making framework of GNPC itself, then you run into issues because that payment that GNPC made to Litasco, for instance, has been recorded by PIAC as a debt that is still unpaid to GNPC. And that constrains GNPC. So when you have a situation where there are many debts outstanding from government to GNPC, there are debts from Ghana Gas to GNPC, there are requirements by government for GNPC to fund cocoa roads or roads in the Western Corridor and so on. And you also read that GNPC is unable to fund its share of capital calls for, say, the Sankofa Ginyami project, or GNPC is unable to act proactively to deal with the gas handling issues that are constraining oil production in the Jubilee and 10 fields, then one should be worried. So essentially what I'm saying is that there needs to be a clear appreciation that GNPC was supposed to be a commercial corporate body that operates efficiently in terms of industry norms, and that is accountable to the government and to the people of Ghana for its decision making. But if the decision making is essentially what it is instructed to do here and there, then the lines get blurred in terms of responsibility. So who is really responsible for these decisions and their consequences?
But it also goes to beg the question of how this oil discovery over the period has impacted or contributed to our development as a country. Over these 10 years, according to the PIAC report, we've made over $10 billion as a country from the oil discovery. But are there tangible investments that we can point to and say this $10 billion has been used for?
Well, first of all, I think that one should be, quite pleased with the fact that oil production has generated $10 billion worth of revenue for government in this relatively short period since oil production came actively into the economy. Now, I think that the impact on the country, of course, depends on how those revenues are deployed. In other words, those are government decisions, which are not necessarily GNPC's responsibility, because the government decisions as to how those resources are spent is what enables us to see whether they are being rightly spent. Again, when you look at some of the PIAC reports, they give clear indications that, unfortunately, some of the decisions of the Ministry of Finance in relation to expenditures are not consistent with the order of disbursements that have been scheduled. So that is where we should be looking closely. I think the PIAC reports provide a lot of information that tells us that the disbursement of the revenues is not always consistent with either the legal framework or what might seem to be in the best interests of communities all around the country. And it seems to me that that is where a lot of focus should be. You see, because, as I said before, it's not changing the laws that will make those decisions better or worse. It is having the right decision making, by people who are committed to the national interest. And when you read accounts in which some of the disbursements that are supposed to go to certain projects, the PIAC people go there
and they don't find them.
They don't find the project and so on. I mean,
but there was a typical case of a 6-classroom block that was recorded to have been built. They went there and they didn't see it. From the structure as it is now, the money from the oil revenue goes into the annual budget funding amount, ABFA, and government is charged to identify 4 priority areas to invest the money in. Between 2017 and now, what we've seen, at least with the PIAC reports that I have read from 2018 to date, is that this administration has invested a lot of the revenue that goes into the ABFA in the education sector because of free senior high school.
Yeah.
And their justification was that even though the law says the oil revenue should be invested in capital projects, they say that this is human resource capital investment, sort of. And that leads to the neglect of the other areas like health and so on.
Yeah.
Does that raise any concern?
Well, it seems to me that we're looking for transparency. If we find that the constraints that are created by the PRMA and the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, if we find that those constraints are not working well, or there's some emergencies that we have to address, I think we have to be upfront and raise that, have that discussed in Parliament and so on, and have, a national appreciation of that position. But we can't go against the law and simply say that, we think, in my mind, because otherwise it means that anybody can come into that situation and decide. If it's not free SHS, it might be some other pet project of whoever, it might be, something that is of concern to a particular individual minister or whatever, but not necessarily a national priority. And that is where I feel that we need to be more transparent and upfront. If we find that there are certain constraints, let us face the situation. I made reference to the fact that the legal provision which constrains GMPC's borrowing power against reserves is a bit of an undue constraint, because all the companies who are partners of GMPC are able to borrow against reserves. That's a well-known practice in the industry. They are able to borrow against reserves. And that, can be done responsibly, because the funding sources are also monitoring your reserves, and they're monitoring how you're replacing the reserves, and they are monitoring your ability to repay them. And they're doing that, systematically. So Tullow cannot just go and borrow against reserves and then use it anyhow. But having a blanket constraint against that kind of activity, I don't find is in the best interest of the country. Because what it means is that if, as for instance, the situation now where, government itself is so severely constrained in terms of its capacity to raise capital and so on. There's one, additional point that I would like to, to throw in. You see, recently, again, there's been back and forth discussion about the way in which, power purchase agreements, have generated a lot of costs for
the excess power.
Exactly.
The World Bank country director is quoted to have made that point.
Right. I think it's interesting that the World Bank is getting itself into the forefront of this discussion, because, again, when I look back at this whole gas-fired power sector, which is where some of these issues are arising, the World Bank has made some serious mistakes in relation to understanding our national energy situation. In the 80s and early 90s, when GMPC, as a result of this gas mandate, was insisting that, based on all the evidence available, gas was an important source to complement and supplement the power from hydro sources. at that time, the view of the World Bank was against having additional capacity from gas resources. Because the argument of the World Bank, and the reason I'm raising this is because fuel costs are a major part of the problem that we have about the power sector. You know, fuel costs are a major part of the problem. And some of those fuel costs have to do with even going back to the use of light crude oil, when, again, this was at the insistence of the World Bank, that light crude oil was a better option because, and the reason was interesting, because according to their analysis and some of the consultants of VRA at that time, the thermal power was just going to complement the hydro. In other words, Ghana really didn't need additional capacity. Ghana just needed to complement in the 1 year in 7 when the water level was low. That was the position of the World Bank.
They
it's
insisted
documented.
that we should use light crude oil.
So light crude oil for them was only going to be needed in the 1 year in 7 when the water level is low. So in 1 year in 7, you buy crude oil, rather than, according to them, commit yourself to a long-term gas offtake. Now, at that time, we were saying it's clear that, you know, the country's growth is going to require more and more power. And, you know, there's documentation which shows that they took a different position. They were on this trajectory of 1 year and 7. So VRA began to have to face the cost of light crude oil for the Aboadze plants. That was really the beginning of a lot of these high costs in the energy sector, you know, which naturally came at a higher cost than what it would have been if you had planned ahead. In those days, we were projecting certain requirements for additional power based on the, you know, growth of the economy as we thought from the data that we had, you know, from the different sources, you know. And they said that VRA should not burden itself with getting locked into gas supply. They should rather go with light crude oil. And based on this view that the light crude oil will give thermal complementation during the 1 year in 7 when the water level of hydro is low. When you look at the situation today, if those gas projects did not go ahead such that gas supply became available to Ghana, how today hydropower is 32.4% or whatever of the capacity, the power sector capacity. Thermal provides 66 and more percent, renewable only a small percent. So, I mean, if gas had not been, you know, sort of insisted upon and developed, where would we be at? Again, the World Bank, which had in the past resisted GMPC's approach on gas, when it came to a project involving ENI and Vitol in the 2015-2016 period, the Sankofa Ginyami project, I mean, the World Bank could accept to guarantee payments to private sector companies at a gas price of $9.8 per million BTUs. That's a very high gas price. In fact, it's about 4 times the kind of gas price that they were saying we should be looking at, you know, in the period when, you know, we were having those discussions about gas. What they thought would be a reasonable price of gas and so on, 2.5, and later they were providing guarantees for a $9.8 price. I gather there's been some reductions in that price in more recent years, but basically the World Bank provided a guarantee, and that guarantee, I think, cost up, I think, over half $500 million. You know, because basically the World Bank was guaranteeing payments to the foreign companies involved, but at a time when GNPC was looking for some guarantees to develop its gas project, the World Bank thought, you know, the country would not need that additional power. And so I think really, I mean, the country director should really go back a little bit into the origins of the problem of energy sector debt. And because, as I said, I mean, the crude oil and the effect it had on VRA and the way VRA then had to go back to the government. And of course, you could never set a power price which would enable you to recover, you know, sufficient for you know, that kind of crude oil price. And those are problems which I believe the World Bank itself needs to face, because I think they owe it to us to be part of the solution, since they've been part of the problem.
They've been part of the problem.
Very much so.
The World Bank.
In its origins.
A period that I know means a lot to you and gets you into a mode of reflection. It's been many years down the line, but when you look back for this year, what are some of the lessons or the messages that you have looking back on the 18th?
You know, June 18th indeed was the day when I was sent to prison. And I was in prison for 5 months until I had this health situation, an attack of asthma, which, to cut a long story short, led to my ending up in hospital, the Cardiothoracic Center, intensive care, and by God's grace, I'm still here. As I always say, you know, they meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And that lesson, you know, from, you know, Joseph's experience has been very much in the forefront of my mind. I mean, I believe that as I'm still alive today, whatever contribution I can make in terms of the experience I've had in the energy sector to ensure that, you know, certain, you know, decisions or certain directions, let me put it this way, certain directions are taken which can be beneficial for the country, I do feel an obligation to make them known. They may not be very comfortable in some people's ears, but that's the least that I can do. But the final point that I want to emphasize is that I think from the experience that I've gained, especially in the oil and gas sector, you know, there's a lot that I have to share with the younger generation. Indeed. With the generation of people who today are having to grapple with a very dire economic situation of our country, and for whom the future can look extremely bleak. But, you know, Ghana is indeed a resource-rich country. I mean, the fact that oil and gas can, even in this short period, begin to contribute so much, you know, to the economy, I feel very confident that, you know, if it's properly run, you know, we have an institution like GNPC which can contribute significantly and contribute, you know, in very large amounts in terms of value to the country's economic future. And I think that original vision of GNPC, you know, being able to ensure the greatest benefit to the country from its own natural resources, that original vision for me is still a very powerful vision, which I'm very happy to share, you know, with the younger generation. And I'm hopeful that it will be a vision that can be embraced without partisan political colors. Because frankly, you know, it is not about partisan political colors. Where we are now as a nation is very serious. And I think especially for the younger generation whose future is at stake, there is a particular responsibility, to share, what one has, been blessed with by way of appreciation of the industry and its capabilities. And so I hope that this will be the spirit in which our discussion will be received.
Indeed. It's been what, 13, 14 years ago, I think? Have you forgiven your adversaries?
I never felt bitter. And as I've always said, I was very ready to let go, and forgiving them came very easily to me. I didn't really hold it, I didn't take it to heart. And I mean, I always also give credit to my dear wife who, in the context of that, always, reminded me that in terms of, she always used to say, God is watching. That was her favorite expression during that period. And she said, God is watching not only those who were doing whatever they were doing against me, but God is watching me as well in terms of, whether the allegations that they were making were justified or not. In the end, I was acquitted and discharged completely, but I think that, in my heart, I don't bear anybody any grudge about that. I take it that God meant it for good. I wish that, in this country, we could have more of those, kinds of open exchanges, even amongst people who have been at different points of the political divide or whatever. But exchanges which are not just based on what my personal experience is and what he did against me and so on, but exchanges that look at what does the country take out of all these experiences and what, going forward, should we learn. For instance, I always used to, in my discussions with President Mills, I always used to say that I would not, be able to support a repetition of what happened to me against people in the NPP just because it happened to me, so there should be retaliation. I couldn't support that. And of course, that was also President Mills' position. He was not about to...
But also change the regime, jail people without any reason.
Exactly. So that cycle of vengeance has to be broken. And I think the way to break it is by having more of, an interaction. And I'm very open to such interactions. And as I say, I meet some of these people, people who are involved in my prosecution and who, really had no business, taking some of the positions that they did. But I don't hold it against them. I think they thought at the time they were serving their political masters.
Indeed. Lawyer Tasu Chikata, thank you so much, and we wish you well.
It's a pleasure. Thank you too.
Always.